Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Timberlane Regional School Board meeting of Thursday, October 18th, 2018. Welcome, everybody. It's 7:30, pretty much on the nose. Call to order. Mrs. Belcher, please.
Brian Boyle.
Here.
Lee Doobie.
Here.
Kim Farah.
Here.
Sheila Lowe's.
Here.
Sarah Mockamer.
Here.
Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Kristen Savage.
Present.
Sue Sherman.
Here.
Jennifer Silva.
She's probably coming late, she told me.
Seated at the board table this evening are the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Earl Metzler, and Student Representative Nick Valhooley.
I'll stand for the pledge, please. Kristen, would you like to lead us in the pledge this evening?
Sure. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could remain standing for just a moment, we've had some more heartbreak in our community over the week. I'd like to send our prayers and good wishes to the family of Michelle Ozier's family, loss of her mother this past week, and also to Jen Marino for the loss of her dad. So if we could take a moment and keep them in our prayers. Thanks, everybody. Got some minutes to go through. One set, I believe, Mrs. Belcher?
I believe so.
Give you a chance to look at these. And I'll entertain a motion to get them on the floor and then move on from there. With the whale. I'll accept a motion when you're ready.
So made.
Mr. O'Neill makes the motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Boyle makes a second. Corrections, additions, errors, deletions. Pretty full set of minutes. Thank you, Mrs. Belcher, for your time that I know this takes to put these kind of things together. Hearing no comments or corrections. All in favor?
8.
Looks unanimous, yep, 8. 0, 0. Thank you all. Hello, Nick. It's going well. What's up with you?
Well, it's been a great week.
Good?
We got some exciting stuff going on these next couple weeks. So next week is obviously Halloween, which is bound to be really fun and exciting for everyone. For trick-or-treating times, you can go to any of the town websites, and they're going to be posted, I'm sure, before next Wednesday, or next Thursday, excuse me. So along with the absurd amounts of candy and parties going all around, it's also very important to focus on probably the most important thing, which is child safety. There's a ton of stuff that can go on during events like these. You have kids going along by themselves, so it's very important that parents make sure that their children are safe and make sure they understand the risks that could possibly occur. Going off the topic of child safety, the graduation of the RAD Kids at Danville Elementary program will take place Tuesday, October 30th. This program teaches students and their parents the importance of child safety and the ways that to prevent child abductions and other tragic events. It also teaches about the importance of bullying prevention and how to spot a potential bullying situation, which goes right into October's theme, which is National Bullying Prevention Month. So that's really important. Also, a huge congratulations to those which are part of the class, and a huge thank you to the Rad Kids for teaching students and parents really just an important life lesson. So thank you very much to them. Just an overall quick heads up, if you don't already know, next Thursday will be an early release day, which I'm sure makes students district-wide very happy. So congrats to all those kids getting out of school early. Just wanted to mention it so parents who may not have known can make preparations for the younger kids. So that's always important. On Halloween, there will also be the yearly parades for each elementary school. So make sure to get out there on Halloween and go watch the students dress up in their respective towns. And I don't know, I remember how exciting that was for me back in Pollard. So I'm really happy that the schools keep that going on. And at the middle school today, progress reports for trimester 1 have been posted, so parents can now access those. Next Wednesday, the middle school book fair will be taking place until Friday in the school library. Students can bring money to school to buy all sorts of different books, the newest stuff. They have a good selection from what I can remember. And on Halloween, there will also be the middle school spooky Halloween concert at the PAC, which I'm sure will be amazing as always. So looking forward to that. At the high school tonight, there was the Best Buddies Ice Cream Social, so thank you to the Best Buddies for sponsoring events like this, and I'm sure it went as amazing as all the other Best Buddies events do go. So next Wednesday will be the annual Mr. Timberlane pageant at the PAC, which is always hilarious, so make sure to show up and see who's crowned Mr. Timberlane. I'm in that, so.
So do you need us to vote for you? Or?
I mean, if you can. You know? So no, it's I'm sure it's gonna be exciting. A little bit nervous, but it's all right. Next Friday, the 26th, is also the spooky soiree for the orchestra and chorus. So I'm sure that's gonna be really fun, and that's organized by the TMA. So thank you to all who are involved, and it's going to be a spooky and fun night. This Friday is also the varsity football teams and cheerleaders' final home game and varsity night, so everyone should come out tomorrow and really support that home team for the last time this season. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
It sounds like you've been busy, Nick. Thank you very much for the work that you're doing, and good luck on your pageant career.
Thanks.
Do we have any delegates or individuals tonight?
We do not.
No. Moving on then. Business consultant report. There's a written copy of it in your packet from Mr. Colby, and at about 6:59 this evening, I received a message, and so did Brian, that he was not able to be with us. He got called home on a family emergency. I would like to reschedule him, because I think we'd like to put a face with his information. I don't know if we wanted to go over these items and chat, or you want to study these, or evidently, Jeff, can you talk to this, or are you not prepared to talk about his work?
I can speak to his work for Bill.
I think it would be helpful.
Come on up, are we agreed, we'd like to listen to him?
Yeah. See what's going on.
So the report is here. I was assuming that Greg was going to speak to these different things on here that he's completed and what's he got, where he's at, so.
Oh, thank you. Madam Chairman, I think this is the first meeting here in a little while that I haven't had to welcome anyone new, so it's always good. So I believe you have his list in front of you, and I'm not prepared to speak to what he has on there. I was planning on Mr. Colby addressing them himself. So when you look at his status update as of October 12th, you'll see that he's been assisting in the analysis of our grants fund, of our other business partnerships fund, food service, analysis of our general fund assets, balance sheet, cash, receivables, and other. And before I go any further on those, these are all aspects that are essentially pre-audit items, pre-audit work to go through and make sure that that closing entries are in place, balances are reflected, and that the intergovernmental and interfund receivables are in alignment. He's also posted and analyzed our year-end trust account activity, which includes our capital reserve fund as well as our scholarships fund, with information from our town, I believe the Danville trustee. assisted with state forms, DOE, the MS-25, communicated with DRA and DOE with regards to the forms and reporting. Actually found potential error in their form, which I thought was interesting. So it didn't quite report the way that it should have been reporting, and it's something that I think it's been there for years. So also analyze tax rates as it relates to our reporting requirements. So work in progress, he has preliminary communication to the auditor to determine timing and workflow of the audit process. Our auditors will be in actually tomorrow morning for preliminary work involving documenting their normal workflow, or our workflow.
What time will they be
Walk
here?
through. Don't know what time they'll be here.
Are you available tomorrow? Or are you gone tomorrow?
I'm gone.
I probably will come over and welcome them and
Excellent.
suggest that we'd like to get this going, I'm assuming. Or would you like me to send them away?
I don't know typically who is going to be here. I would suggest it
Yeah.
may just be
Well, no,
staff.
Yeah, that's fine.
Doing what we call walkthroughs, which are
Yep.
initial steps in documenting the processes that we have in place on an annual basis, conducting interviews and the like. So we've analyzed the general fund liabilities, SAU activity as it relates to the Timberland balance sheet, capital assets and related reporting. We still have those, and that's typically something that does wrap up. That's part of our governmental reporting, and that does typically get completed a little later on in the audit. Concluded initial meetings with individuals in the business office. Employees has had discussions with regards to their duties, responsibilities, controls, and workload. So this is part of his observation, his participation in the work to understand how the office works, if there are any synergies that can be realized or recognized as part of his recommendations ultimately for this board, which I believe this board had requested. He's also doing some work on internal controls, making sure that we have balanced controls in place for all the activities that the office undertakes. And to the extent that we can implement others and stronger controls, I expect those to be part of his recommendations, ultimately. It's not a full internal controls audit that he's performing, but I think it's certainly a critical aspect of it. Time frame for completion from here on out, looking to assist him with audit fieldwork, approximately the end of October, which is around now. I believe that he is looking to deliver to the board staffing recommendations and other recommendations in mid-November, or after substantial completion of the audit fieldwork. As he's been going through his work, he has been observing, understanding, and working with people in my department to be able to ascertain duties, responsibilities, breakdown of work, workflow, and that sort of thing. So,
I know you're just digesting all of this right now and not hearing it from Mr. Colby's point of view, and I really want you to have a chance to meet him. But would you like an opportunity to jot down questions, send them to Jeff, or send to me? I'll send to Jeff. Jeff will send to Greg. Ahead of time, because I'm going to try and schedule him now for our next meeting, which is November 1st. I don't want to wait, and hopefully he'll have some more things to add to the list in the next couple of weeks. So unless you have something you think that Jeff can answer, Kim?
Approximately how much have we spent on this consultant to
So the
date?
price.
I believe it is 55.93 to date. We have an invoice outstanding, might be in the $2,000 range, so 7,500 perhaps. So we're looking, would be outstanding through today.
Other things. Lee, then Brian.
Jeff, has he shared with you any major concerns or findings, things that are just glaring to him?
I think as a general proposition, I think he recognizes the need for additional staff in the office, generally speaking. And my question is, to what level and where do you see that staff best fitting in? I have my ideas, and I'd like to know what your ideas are and what your thoughts are, so we can get the most efficient process in place to be able to enhance our internal controls, reporting, and really make the office seamless in that regard. So I think that's been probably his biggest concentration as it is right now. And like he had other concerns aside from workload and.
But nothing major that's, well, we need to focus on
Yeah,
this.
no. Left the back window open and all the checks fly out and nothing like that, no.
Brian.
Obviously, when the board hired the consultant, it was, I guess it was more of a general help out the office without a specific statement of work from what I remember. do you think when Mr. Colby comes in front of the board, are you expecting him to, this is more of a question, not a request, are you expecting him to have a formal presentation or more just, this is what I've done? Do you think he's going to have a written product?
So-
What do you think he's going to do?
So let's look at it in two different aspects, and one is the status update and what he's been doing, generally to date, right? And then I think the other aspect of it is, hey, from the observations that you've made being part of the work, what do you think? What do you recommend in terms of how the office is set up, recommendations for staffing and that sort of thing? So having the discussion with him on that, he just said, look, Jeff, I'm really not at a point right now where I would be able to make a solid recommendation in terms of staff, in terms of how that would fit into workflow and how to best optimize your internal control structure as it is. So I think that critical element would probably be where, if a presentation were in order, I think there's a more comprehensive aspect to it that he's just not there yet. So I do expect that that's going to be a much more comprehensive. And it's very difficult because you want to give a general direction, general feeling, and the general feeling that I get is it's staffing, and then the more particular is, well, where does it fit in? What level? How does it fit in? How does it all tie in? How does the workload look? How are internal controls enhanced? How is reporting enhanced? How is analysis enhanced? So to make a recommendation like that without it being comprehensive and complete, I think is difficult. I think it's best to be able to say, this is where we're at. I think this is what it's looking like. That's a general direction, but really, I think we're all looking for a more comprehensive answer addressing all of those, and I think he's going to be ready to deliver it, but I think it's a little premature at this point.
Kim, then Sean.
I'm a little confused. So we have an audit that you're going to have the field work done in October and be essentially done by then, with the audit being written up by December. Last year, the auditors came in August and then came back again several times, right? In January, February, a couple times, all right? So now we've paid a consultant under $10,000. We've got an audit that's going to be done by the end of December. I'm not understanding why we need anybody else in the business office.
I think it'd be good to await his recommendations and understand or ascertain why.
Okay, I'm just looking at it from a strictly audit perspective.
Yeah.
And where we stand right now.
Well, and let's not forget that audit's not the only aspect of the work in the office, right?
Well,
That's a deliverable. But this board, reasonably so, Budget Committee, reasonably so, has asked for things differently than we've presented in the past. And that shifts the burden on producing reports and gathering information as well. And I think that it's a good opportunity for the board to look and to ask what is it we'd like? And if you'd like more of the analytical work and different reporting and an ability for my office to be able to deliver on those, because you've been looking a lot at the numbers, and it would be nice to be able to have my office be able to satisfy and accommodate those requests as well. So it's really not just audit compliance. It's I think you guys are looking for a little bit more, and it's reasonable. It's reasonable, and I'd like to deliver on those, and I'd like to have my office deliver on those.
so in that sense, then, we're not really looking for an accountant. We're looking for a data analyst.
If we have an accountant to alleviate the burden on my plate, then that allows me to engage in the analytical work that you all would probably like. To be able to generate better reporting, to generate reports that you asked for. I think that we had a request to have a report delivered in function only, right? 7-digit object code or 7-digit account code. That's great, no problem. That takes a while for me to get together. The Budget Committee last year, I think, had some additional requests for their reporting, which I was able to accommodate, but that takes time, and that ends up pushing the audit off a little bit. I think that was value added. I think it's good that the Budget Committee is saying, you know what? We think that this is the information that would be useful for us to see. And then in order for me to go in and do that takes some time. It's impacting a lot of reports that we already have. It's verifying, double checking, confirming, ensuring data integrity. And, that's what it is. I'd like to be able to deliver on that.
Sean?
One of the things that Mr. Campo was actually talking about when he was here last time was the whole checks and balances within your system is because you're not just the guy that approves the journal entry adjustments. You're actually the guy that's putting in the journal entries. So that's the problem that, I think he's identified right off the bat that we have that, you're the one-stop shop and you want to have the checks and balances that somebody's entering in and you're the one that's making adjustments and auditing and a whole record trail of that. So I think right there, that's, I don't think I have to go far on a limb here. It seems like that you need to have somebody that's going to do that lower level data entry aspect of that, accounting component.
That's right. And we've put a workflow in place to some degree for our journal entry processing, which I'm very pleased with. But it's not just a rubber stamp either. It's saying, hey, what's the work that you're doing? And let me be the second set of eyes to make sure that it makes sense and we all understand what the entry is. Then let me take it a step further and say, hey, can we should we be doing this in the future? Can we find a way to work it into our system? So to your point though,
Should we have a goal that we have a particular time when we're going to identify this, because this is going to be identifying somebody that we're going to need, which is then going to be an SAU issue because it's going to be an SAU staff to deal with this, and we're doing through budgets right now so that we want to be able to handle this accordingly, and we don't want to do this January, February timeframe. I mean, we're going to be halfway through the next year of doing all this stuff again, and so we're already a half year behind. Yeah. So I think, sooner is better than later, and it would actually make your workflow easier, addressing that.
I agree with that. And
I was kind of hoping we'd have something really substantive by mid-November, Sean, that we'd be able to, because that works in our budget area, I think.
Can I put that out as an ideal target?
Seems like that's what he's targeting.
That's what you're
Are
targeting,
we in
that's good.
consensus about that? I'm gonna let Sheila go and then I'll come back to
No,
you.
I'm just trying to understand, so at what point are we gonna get these recommendations? November first?
I'm hoping it's gonna be mid-November,
So why are we gonna have them come in November first?
because I wanted you guys to meet him and him talk about these things, because he could elucidate a little bit more and I think answer questions about what he's seen, and maybe he'll be ready November 1st. That'd be great to say.
I'm just trying to figure out why he would come in twice, that's, just thinking of
Maybe he'll
his
be,
time.
yep,
I think it's timing. He was due to be here tonight.
yeah, and then we were gonna,
Kind
he
of
was
like a
gonna have another
midpoint check.
month. Anything else, Dr. Metzler?
So to Mr. O'Neill's point, the practical piece of this is there is some money in the budget that's not spent. And we were talking, I think I might have been talking casually with Brian about this, about a January date, which is halfway through the year, so the dollars are really worth twice as much. Because it would be, you think July all the way to January, you're only paying for half a year, because you'd be back. But then it's about budgeting for the following year, which you're doing now. So you have some idea about what you think this might cost. We have some flexibility, we don't have a facilities director in either district now, so the facilities piece is all being covered by an SAU employee in both districts. Not that we're talking about Hampstead, so you have some flexibility. But I think we talked about getting through this audit process and then maybe having that person in January. By the time we advertised and recruited and found the right person, and you decided on what you thought the dollar amount might be, January would be good, so.
I think that's if you started like tomorrow, advertising. It takes them a while to get good people in.
Wait till January, you're not going till March.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you. Again, we were waiting on the recommendations. What are we advertising for? I think we have an idea, but I'd hate to think I know exactly and then have him say, no, you don't need this, you need this. Like, I think to Kim's point, it's an analytical piece as opposed to a bookkeeper or vice versa. I don't want to advertise for the wrong position. Right, so.
Other questions about this? And we are agreed, we're gonna try to get him to come on the 1st and hopefully have more to tell us and maybe be even closer to being ready to give a reasonable recommendation. Because remember, Mr. Campos, when he came to talk to us, talked about, he was hoping Mr. Colby would be able to give us some recommendations for what kind of staffing situation we might need.
Well, the directive simply could be, we want the recommendations on November 1st. Because what's going to be different from November 1st to November 18th or 17th?
Not much.
Well, you don't know
15,
how much
yeah.
work he has left to do.
Oh, I know,
He still
but-
has a lot of analytics.
Yeah,
I don't
I
want him
don't
to
know.
rush a decision.
But in the same sense, like Sheila said, why have them come in 2 weeks before when we could wait 2 more weeks on the other side and have them come in and be an all-inclusive meeting and get all the answers?
If he's all set and he's got the recommendations, then sure, bring
Right.
him in November first, but
if he's not ready. It's
What is he
silly.
gonna tell us on November first if he's not ready? I
So the,
don't-
so the pleasure of the board, if he's ready on November 1st, you'd like to see him with recommendations. If not, come on November 15th and come with your recommendations. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
How do we feel about that?
Makes sense.
Okay. Greg, you got,
Jeff, you got that? Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. All right, you might as well stay right there, because it's budget update time.
So in front of you, as part of your packet, you should have an updated schedule of school board expenses. I believe the directive from the board was to take a look and sharpen the pencil on your own department budget and leave, without touching legal fees, without touching the legal fees line, which is the top of page 3. The difference there is 50,000. If you look on page 4, you'll see that the difference, total difference in the budget is 50,000. So ultimately, the lines have been adjusted down, and the only thing outstanding at this point is the legal adjustment. I can walk you through. I don't know if you have, it's highlighted, but I can walk you through on page 2, under the 23-14. 550 account annual report and ballot printing, based on trend, removed $200. Under annual audit, removed $3,000 based on trend, which is at the bottom of the page, from $47,000 to $44,000. Bottom of the of page 3, advertising recruiting, or the advertising legal notices, brought that down 4,000 based on, essentially based on trend. And I believe that gets the budget overall in the realm, in the area that the board was hoping for. That leaves open the idea, your major variance at this point, your only variance at this point is legal fees. I believe as part of your packet, you may also have a summary of legal expenses by major category. So you would ask for some information on that.
Yep.
And so you have it. So unless you have any questions with the budget in that function generally, I think that it's probably the legal fees you may have some questions on. And it's not my budget, it's really your budget, so ask away. Whatever guidance I can provide will hopefully be able to help us ramp up a number in that area.
So I'll entertain some questions for Jeff, if Shirley, you want to start?
Was there a contract in 2016-17 that was being negotiated?
Yes.
SSU?
Was that
TSSU.
TSSU? Was that year?
I believe so.
And then the year before would have been the TTA, the 15-16, correct?
There's
They're
a
currently
year
doing,
lag,
18, 19. So if you roll it back,
there's a year lag.
to roll it
between
back 3
each
years,
one.
is that this, if we're doing one right now, so it's 18, 19. So
18, 19. So
19,
15-16 would have been
15, 16.
TTA. And then 16-17 would have been TSSU.
Didn't we, wasn't that last year? No, that was 2 years ago?
No, it wasn't
2 years
last
ago.
year.
2 years ago, wow, yeah. Yep. We try to stagger them so they're not in the same year, but
Right.
you never know, because if one gets a 3 and a 2, eventually they hit on the same cycle, but we've avoided that recently, right?
Right.
And would that come under, Jeff, would that come under, the negotiations come under the general district support?
Yeah, where does the contract negotiation stuff come out of?
A lot of that is under human resources.
Okay.
That would be.
That makes perfect sense now. Doesn't it?
Well, it's interesting, if you look at the trends, it's not a steady trend, it's not a stable trend. It's nothing that you can really put your finger on and say, well, this is it this year, and we know we have that coming up, and we know we have negotiations, and therefore it's a X bump. We know we have this coming up, some things just materialize. It's nothing consistent. And so when I looked at this, coming up to 140, I looked at where we had been, where the trends had been, what we had going on in the budget year upcoming, and came up with 140, with the idea being that, you know, overall, we would probably be okay in that realm. Is it too much? Is it too little? we'll really only know once we have some sort of actuals.
Other questions?
Why the 89,000 for special education?
That was a bump year, and we had some extraordinary expenses in there, and
Well, what happens when cases go to due process? They can go on for quite some time, and it gets expensive, depending on, and due processes, they're right. You know, you have some disagreements about services, and experts get involved, and it kind of goes its way through the DOE, and it gets expensive, depending on how long they drag. And you could have none in a given year, you could have 10 different cases where they're contested. And
So
there's
it
no-
wasn't any, it was just typical stuff, it just happened
It just happens
to
to
be
be.
involved at that point. I mean, nothing spectacular, I mean,
No, nothing unusual,
Nothing
really.
unusual.
It's during their annual review, and it's not as simple as, oh, the district said no, so we're in due process. It's really complicated. It has to do with student placement. Sometimes a family may want a placement in a place that's not necessarily what anybody's recommending, and it can get dragged out for quite some time.
so do we have any actuals to date on this breakup? The 2017, 2018 is clearly last year.
correct. Yeah.
So do we have any status of where we're at on all of these numbers so far this year?
And Jeff should have that. I know we started negotiations earlier than we have in the past, so, but Jeff would have those.
If we're looking at a trend, I'd like to have an idea.
I believe at the last meeting, I believe I included some actuals, right, to date?
One of the things to point out with a lot of these budgets is it's hard with year-to-dates to try to figure out where you are, because nothing's ever linear.
Right.
I mean, you're trying to take, you know,
Especially legal.
if it was preloaded, you know, or backloaded, you know, if you spent that, you know, just takes, for example, the 89,000 in 16 and 17 year for special education. I mean, that could have been all in the early part of the year, it could have been on the latter part, you know, or
Right.
we're trying to think of it as it's nice linear, stretched out over the entire year. So that's always something to take in note when you're looking at sort of
Yeah.
trend lines.
Well,
Appreciate
especially with
that.
legal, it can have a spike at any point, but,
Yeah,
or a
it's
drop.
It's billing too. It's not necessarily, the billing comes in at different times. It's not as
Correct.
clean as, you got the services in this month, the bills at the end of the month. Sometimes the bill's a month or two late. And, you know, we're going through initialing and trying to figure out exactly what services were rendered and when.
Anything else? Yes, Brian?
So I guess last year we just lucked out. We spent less than $60,000.
No contracts. I think it was relatively,
Special ed was down.
You go to
Obviously.
100, 191, down to under 60, and now,
no surprises.
well, I mean, and now you're, I guess, wisely budgeting to fall in between 16 and 15, 16, and 16, 17.
And if we didn't have anything coming up next year, like contract or something to that effect, if the factors that were drivers in some of these legal fees in years past were not going to be part of them in the future, it would be less. So,
In a year, and for any given reason, you could have a hearing or two, and then that's sometimes, you know, you need an attorney and the district has an attorney, so things get to be times 2, times 3. It does get to be expensive.
Okay.
Anyone have any motions they want to make about this budget? I thank you, Kim.
I'll make a motion to reduce the legal line by 50,000 and level fund this budget.
So bring the legal line to 90,000.
Yeah.
A second for Dr. Farr's motion.
I'll
Kristen,
second that.
seconds.
Discussion there?
Any discussion? Yes, Brian?
I guess, Kim, I guess my fear is that when I'm looking at the history, I like your number, by the way, but when I look at the history that, so 3 years ago, we actually spent 100,000, and 2 years ago, we spent 191,000 and change. So if you're going into I don't know,
I think you want to look at the history of the entire school board expense line,
The
not
line.
just that one line.
oh, okay, I have this, well, you were talking.
That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the trend for the overall, this entire budget, not just the legal line.
Okay, I guess, I'm sorry, your motion is to reduce the school board line, not the overall budget versus the legal line.
You said legal,
I-
so.
I'm reducing the legal line by 50,000 to make this budget level funded.
That doesn't.
So in essence, you could take that and sprinkle that 50 grand, but you're reducing it all throughout all these budgets.
No, I'm saying to,
She's saying,
No, I think, Kim, if I could, I think this is what we're doing with every, I think it's, she's saying the same thing that we've done with every single department, right? Everybody's come in with the same money and the same, and I appreciate you doing that, because what we're telling folks was, that's the number you have, identify the needs within that number. So you may have different needs in there, but that number's not gonna change. And each school, each principal, each department has come in, athletic department, everyone's come in like that, so. I think you talked about it last week, you said you wanted to walk the walk, talk the talk, you wanted the school board to do the same thing that we'd asked all the departments to do, so.
Right.
I think that's the spirit, right?
that's the spirit, because within this budget, this 200 and, whatever this line is,
228.
228 is what we.
228, for instance, I can go back historically, and Jeff, you've done that because you've lowered some of these lines. The audit typically is running about 10,000 less, say, than we're budgeting. So there's that 10,000 that, should we go over
If you
90 in legal, is gonna bring us up to 100 if we need it. There's $4,000 in school board conference expenses. No one goes to a conference, there's 4,000 there. So that's what I'm implying. I'm saying level fund the budget, pull that 50,000 out, and like anything else, you have to make fund transfers if we find that we're over on that line.
And in the event, we'd come back to you if we, if that were to happen, and he would say this, legal or whatever it might be, you may need to increase that with a transfer, right? From somewhere
Right.
else, yeah.
so do you understand, Kim, everyone understand Kim's
I do now.
motion? You do now? Yeah. That we reduce the line, 50,000, so now it brings it to the level funded 228. Is that 221? Rounding it off.
228, 221, which we should be.
Yeah. Yes, sure.
Okay, so now I want to talk about the,
Well, we haven't voted on this motion, so do you want to vote on this motion? If you got something
well, I
else you
don't know
want
if
to
we
add?
can vote on this motion until we talk about the $25,000 that we were talking about returning to the schools.
It's not 25, though.
Oh, the miscellaneous expense.
Miscellaneous.
No, but we talked about that last time and decided that we were not gonna,
Not going to do that.
not gonna
We're
do
not
that.
gonna return it.
Because last year we used it for various consultants to bring them in,
Used.
and we may be looking
Right.
at trying to bring somebody in to do some help with the strategic
Strategic
planning
plan.
or facilities. So I think we discussed it last time about not moving that money out.
That's right.
That's
Before,
the question.
So we have a motion on the floor.
before we vote there,
Yep.
I agree with where you're going, Kim. I hope at some point, because we're all on the same page here, to level fund the budget. At some point, management, has to have a general idea where there should be $1.5 million to $2 million of, you have to have a built-in surplus. You can't run this place that tight.
I understand that. I don't think this budget is where you build,
No, well, it's spread throughout all the budgets.
it's spread throughout all the budgets, and I still maintain, if you look historically at this budget, that there's room.
Okay.
Can I?
Sure.
Yeah, I think, to Kim's point, I certainly wouldn't come back with something, we know what the target is, we're level funding and we're we have a couple of strategies, but I'm not gonna, the last thing I wanna have to do is come back and say we don't have any more money, we ran out of money in April, like, what do we do now? So, we wouldn't prepare a budget like that, so we never had like a structured surplus per se, but I would imagine the number you're talking about will have to be bits and pieces in lots of different places to get to that. Our hope would be, what would the spend be, right? So when we come back
Right,
with a
right.
level funded budget, I don't think the anticipated spend is that exact same number. I think the anticipated spend would be what you're talking about. Is it as much as 2? That's gonna be a great challenge. Is it more like somewhere in the, 800,000 to $1 million, maybe? That probably makes more sense. I don't know how comfortable people are with that. That's a little tighter than we've been in years past, but, I think those are the targets. And, if we shoot for that and we come in, like, a lot of times we think there's only gonna be 1.8 and we come back with 3 million.
Right.
Right, so if we planned on, like, it looks like there'll be $1 million left over and we come back with that 1.5 or 1.8, that'd be right on spot, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
What is the
Sheila?
last year of our bond? Next year? This
That was the
1920,
question we
is that
talked
the
about with-
last?
We've talked about this a couple times, 1920 or 2021? Keeps to be in flux.
I was under the impression it was 1920.
That's what I thought.
That's
what I
what
think.
I believe.
Can we,
And that
can we
was-
get an official,
Yes,
official
could we
ruling on this? We
officially
keep
get a
speculating.
ruling?
We got like about a 3-year window when we all think it ends.
And it's
think
two
it's
questions, when does it
1920.
end and when can you ask for another one?
Right,
And do you
that's-
ask for one a year in advance of the other one expiring so that they don't, there's no,
Well,
there's not,
yeah,
It's a
you
mid-
could do that. It's just,
Not a
one's
year in between.
retiring.
I just want to know when that 1.6 or whatever it is we pay out is stopping.
I would hate for anyone at this table to think that I'm enjoying this discussion, of seeing everyone trying to figure it out. I can get the information for you. It's an odd stop, it's not a hard stop. We make our last payment in a new fiscal year. So we make two payments during each fiscal year. So we have one payment that'll lapse over into the next fiscal year. It's an odd, it's like a half-year thing.
Oh, all right.
So we have a half year.
They
in
probably go
19
calendar year, and
I think
that's
we
why.
have
that's how
half
I
year in
understood it, but I,
2021.
so for me, I thought 1920, like you thought.
But let me get the exact date of our
We talked
last
about when
payment.
could you ask for the next one?
2021.
Is it on the spring 20 ballot or is it on the spring
21.
21 ballot?
I think it's on the spring 20.
One is you can have overlapping,
Yeah, I mean,
bond
you can-
notes. I
yeah.
mean, that's legal. The thing is you're looking at how it would impact it. Now, if we structure the future bond payment, that it sort of does the same thing. The first payment of that new bond hits the second half of that fiscal year where the other one ends. Then you're just stopping one and, you pay the ending one on the first part of the school year. Then the second part of the school year, you pay the first of the new bond, and then you keep going all the subsequent years, in the future.
That would be the perfect timing.
Perfect timing, yeah. That's including that, we do all
Alright.
the ballot stuff, all that stuff good ahead of time.
I'd like to vote on this motion, Kim's motion, if we could,
If I
while
may,
you're getting the,
if I may, Madam Chairman, the question was asked, I don't know, Kristen, was it you or
Sheila did.
on the run rate, on the trend to date? Where we were to date?
Oh, me. On the
year to
legal,
date.
yes.
So year-to-date is 19,000, and that, if you were to say that covered 2 months, I think that would be fair, based on our billing, that we don't always get timely.
July through September, maybe?
No,
No?
it would be July, August.
July, August.
Yeah.
So the legal line is, what was it, 19K?
I don't think I've seen a September one yet.
Yeah. So that's where it's at. That's where the question was. I don't think it's just 2 months, spread out 2.5 months, 3 months, because we had some come in from the prior year, so.
Okay, back to the motion on the floor, which is to remove 50,000 from the legal line that brings the bottom line down to 228, 221. Have I restated that right, Kim?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, hearing no other discussion, I'm gonna call for a vote. All in favor? 800. Okay, now the topic of when the bond ends. Can we get that clarified?
Get that for you.
If
I
it's
have the-
another vote, if it's another payment into the next fiscal year, I believe it's 20.
Can I have the exact month? I'd like to get that, because that's informative for for your budget purposes. Otherwise, I can run upstairs. There's only one binder I didn't take. I can run upstairs and take a look at
Well,
that.
can we put that on your sticky note and get back to us? so
You know,
we
Jeff,
have that?
as a recommendation, I'd actually have him, if you could email it to us, that way we all have a permanent record of
We
it. and
email
We
that
could always
to-
refer it to
To
it
me, and I'll
for future
forward it
dates.
along. Jeff,
Yes,
thank you.
perfect. Well, thank you for that.
Okay, where are we next?
Student activities accounts?
No,
We got more
What's
stuff
this?
here,
more budget stuff.
more budget stuff. No? We've got,
No?
we've got the activity account, student activity account, which is on the agenda. And then we've got a two-page,
I believe, Kristen, you would ask for more of what a 7-digit.
what the
report
code
would
looked
like.
like.
That's it.
Thank you
So
very
if that's
much.
good, yeah?
You wanna
Oh.
study that a little bit? That's the seven code, 7 place
Hands down,
high.
if it's possibly more than 100% more easy to read that's that report. It's a lot easier to read.
Do you want to digest this and come back with questions, or you want to ask
Really,
questions about it tonight?
that's just the form of what you already have.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just easier to read, like you said.
thank you, Jeff, on
100%.
that.
At
Is
least
there,
easier to read.
are we ready to move on to student activity account? And that's this, the other page we have got? Is that where we are on the agenda? Student activity account, informational, here's this. This is across the district.
Correct. Not incredible. Okay, so when you're looking at this report, this is the function, object, location. So you'll see that we have some stipends and then we have some set aside for the musicals.
Can I interrupt a moment,
Sure.
Jeff? Kathy just wants me to check, that finalizes our school board budget? Are we set with that? We're not come revisiting that again? We're good
Nope.
with that?
It wasn't
At-
clear by the motion, so I wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that was the
at-
intent.
At the bottom line of
228?
220,
So you want me to, I'll put a motion out that we accept the
Move the budget.
school board budget and move it forward in the amount of $228,221.
I'll second it.
just to clarify it, so it's cleaner.
Yep, I appreciate that.
Want to vote on that?
Are we ready to vote? All in favor? 8-0, thank you very much. I thought it was clear already, but thank you for making it clearer. All right, back to the activity account. So is this district-wide? This doesn't make sense.
Correct. This is a listing of our accounts, and you'll see all 100, all 1410.
Yep.
And then when you get into it a little bit deeper, you'll see that the 112 speak to some salary lines.
Yep.
Get into 610, which are supplies,
Yep.
co-curricular, program, school. 733s, there may be some new equipment in there. 810 speaks to dues and assessments for music. And then 890 are miscellaneous other student accounts, with the largest being, as you can tell, the bottom line, and that's the high school.
Why are dues and assessments for music in a student activity account?
It would likely relate to any of the musicals that we do or any of the performances that we put on, shows, any licensing fees that we have.
Well, musicals there. Oh, you mean the rights to the musical?
A lot of times the memberships that we may have entitle us to certain usage of material.
I don't think this is giving us what we really want.
I think this is speaking to what the question is in terms of, is there money in the budget for student groups that maybe could supplant the money that the board doesn't feel that they could supply to music groups? Because if you look at the 1410 code,
Yep.
you will see that in 17-18, they expended 177,000. And right now, the voted budget is 194. And I don't have it off the top of my head, but I'm quite certain that they did not expend the entire amount in 17-18. Do you know what was the budgeted number on the 1410 for 17-18? I have the expend on this report, but I don't have the.
No good budget on that report?
You've got the spend,
It's
but not the
1410.
budget.
1410, the roll-up of 1410, which is what you've got a breakdown of here.
Right, the voted and then the spend, so the 17-18 expended and the 17-18 voted, yeah, so it's 177, 197. Your question was on what year?
What is the 17-18 voted?
Kim?
Is it on this one?
Right on the front there.
I'm looking at a different one, because I'm looking, just.
17, but it was 197.
197, so they,
$20,000 difference.
there were
Kristen
20,000
simplified.
under on
Yeah.
student activities in
25,000
17-18.
under.
So And the voted budget is is 194,511. So I would think that there's money in student activities to support maybe a few more groups than they did in the past.
I think we talked about this, privately in terms of what happens. So when groups would come in the spring and they're asking for money, and they're typically high school kids, not always, could be a DI team or something like that. I think you're looking at the whole number, right? And it's typically, most of the time, we get DI groups that come in, Destination Imagination groups, but normally it's high school groups. So they were encouraged, again, you say, okay, we're gonna do it this time, but make sure you budget for it next year. And then we tried to budget for it, but then when the proposed doesn't pass and you're in a default, then the high school still doesn't have that money. So a lot of times when it's building specific, we would direct the principal to look in your building level. But I don't think we ever really transferred money from like an elementary school to the high school or high school to the elementary school, correct?
Correct.
To support a group. We didn't do that, even though you're saying there's like $20,000 there.
Right.
So it is a strategy. We just didn't take money away from one particular level to give to another level, and a bulk of the requests were coming in. But I know the principals were budgeting for this, and in the middle school as well, in terms of what they thought moving forward. So that's the answer to your first part. That's why it's not in this year again, because it wasn't in the year when we told them to do it. It would have been in the proposed, but it's not in the default. But now the school board has adjusted some money, right? Is it there now? When we moved
It's
the
got
money.
roughly $20,000 more this year.
Yeah, overall, so I understand what you're saying. You're saying, look at
Not
the whole,
necessarily at the
look at
high
the student
school.
activity account, the whole account.
Yeah.
And if it's not being spent by one level, use it at the other level,
Right.
correct?
That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
Yep.
Especially at the time of the year that they come in and make that request.
Correct, and so I think it's helpful because for the high school to look at all the high school activity-related accounts and be able to say, well, I can maybe borrow from here and move it there and that sort of thing. And sometimes it's in larger amounts where you're not entirely comfortable making that move. If the directive or the prerogative of the board is to, hey, look more globally, that's helpful.
Well, no, it's helpful, except I just want to express the sensitivity to this. So can you imagine, each one of the principals having to give up money at a certain point when they don't know if they're going to spend it yet? And you're going, Danville and Pollard and Atkinson, sorry, we're taking your money and giving it to the high school. They protect their, it's just, politically, internally, it's not great. But if it goes unspent, that's not great either, right? I mean, if we're coming to another source to ask for money, we're coming to the school board to ask for money that we actually have in a student activity account.
Right.
If we look at it more globally. So,
Right.
And you have one account, even in music, you have
It
one account.
puts us in a position where we can't say no. It's very uncomfortable for us we want to support all these organizations, but
well, I'm telling you,
Why isn't it
you've made it clear that the money's available and we need to manage it differently and they don't need to come ask here, right? So,
That's helpful.
right?
Kim.
So 1410 is where it's at. We decide this is for all the kids, for all the clubs and activities. You figure out how to spend it, right?
That's correct.
But not to come in
I thought we'd give that
underspent here,
message.
or no, and then come back and ask the school board for money when we actually have money in the 1410 account that we could use to support whichever group is asking. Okay?
Kim.
So, back to in the proposed budget last year, the requested budget, that line was 207,730. We did add that up. We bumped it up to include that. The school board voted budget, which was after we made the adjustments, is at 220,311. So it's actually higher than the proposed budget was last year.
So there's money.
There's
Well,
There's
more
money.
money.
I think I've identified, though, at least why, because it's the high school asking, and it's not, he's got to make it available to the high school, even though it may be in an account that's not high school.
Oh, okay, but what I'm saying is, that
money
that
there.
line, they asked for 207 last year, that, they didn't get it because the default passed, but when we readjusted the lines, that line now is at 220, which is more than what was asked for in that
Yeah,
line.
no, I get you saying the money's there. I'm just telling you
Okay.
what I would tell the principal, find it in your building, and the money's available. It's not necessarily in your building level account, but the money's available somewhere. He needs to find
Yeah, I
it.
can't tell from this roll-up.
So-
If it went to the high school, this line is up significantly.
Well, it is, and so if you see at the bottom, at the 60 versus 50, so 60 is high school, 50 is middle school. When I was looking at where we were putting things in order to be consistent, if we have any clubs or anything like that, they really need to be captured right in the same in the same function, right? The same, theoretically in the same object, just for a different school. So we're set up like that. But you'll notice that there's nothing there for middle school. And when I was going through that with the principal, I said, you know, it would be really good if we can get those costs into one category, which is why the proposed was, why the adopted was so much higher, because that's able to, we're able to move those funds to where they belong for budgetary purposes and get that straightened out a bit so that we have a better, you know, understanding. When we're looking at this, we should be able to say, well, what are our student activities? And when we have some historic reason for putting them in a different, you know, function, no, let's get them consolidated. So it was a nice opportunity for my office to be able to put those in, which is why it went from the 207 probably to the 220, and even with the additional ask, even if things were the way that they were, I think we're okay. I think the tough thing about it is, for example, under the music, just by way of example, you know, states, you're talking about 1,200 to 1,500 and for registrations. And so, to your point, you would say, gee, we aren't really sure if we're going to be using this or not. It's to the tune of $1,500, $3,000 per account. But as we get later on in the year, I think there should be some certitude as to whether that's going to happen or not, right? You know, relatively early in the year, whether you're going to be doing that, so.
The other, if I could, if I just finish this thought?
I'd like Kim
Okay,
to
go
have a
ahead.
chance first, and then,
So, where do we stand in the high school student activity
Right.
account? So
That's
let's
what
look
we-
at the 60, because I can't see it, I don't have that detail.
right, that's
Where
what I.
where are we at on the 890-4560.3 line this year versus last year? Because this is our issue, is the high school not having the funds,
Yep.
so.
Right, and I don't like the idea of taking it from other schools.
No, I don't either. I know.
Neither of us like that.
Yeah.
No, but
Um,
so we,
but-
I,
You actually spent under that, I mean, you budgeted 30 grand and you spent 25K.
Well, here's where that part gets a little tricky, and you correct me if I'm wrong. So, I'm used to seeing these types of things in a collective bargain agreement, like a senior class advisor, a junior class advisor, you know, the things, a yearbook, you know, all the things that you know, and these all fall in here somewhere, and what they get paid varies, and it's consistently inconsistent.
Yep.
What does the person that runs Ultimate Frisbee Club get versus the person that wants to do? And it's really consistent, and I asked them, and we've been meeting with them regularly, I go, you need to develop a consistent, like, that's the stipend for that particular activity. If two people split it, well, then they split the stipend. But, you know, sometimes it's two stipends, sometimes it's one stipend divided in half. It's consistently inconsistent. And then it's a matter of what are the things that you absolutely need to run your high school? Those have to be priority one. Like, you have to have a senior class advisor, you have to have somebody do the yearbook, you have to, you know, and then at some point you get down to, what do you have for new clubs? And sometimes they budget for clubs and then the club doesn't run because a teacher retires and that's the only person that liked cribbage or, you know, something along those lines. And that all factors in addition,
Insects.
yeah, in addition to the groups that are coming in looking to travel. Right? Does that all fall into kind of the same category?
Yeah, it's all
Yeah,
in there.
theoretically.
Yeah. So that's,
I agree with Kim, it's not showing what I was hoping it was gonna show. I want the high school is where we're concerned about, not poor Danville's elementary program, which is small money
I mean,
compared to.
yeah, I agree. You look at some of these over here and what they budgeted and what they're actual, they're pretty, you know, close to one another. The one that stands out to me is a sore thumb is the first one. Is that you budgeted, you know, 10,611 and you spent 22,419. I mean, that's the one where, all right, what was the major cost drivers and something like that caused it to do that? And then with us as a board putting more money in there that, you know, you could say that would cover it, but you want to sprinkle it all over across all of these activities. But we should really understand where the cost drivers were in that first line item.
Other comments, questions, phrases?
I mean, Jeff, do you know the answer to that? Like, you know, is it the salaries for the people that actually work at band camp? Are we providing
part of it.
scholarships? Are we fixing instruments? Like, where,
That's.
I mean, that's like we missed on that one big time, right?
That's.
Yeah, I mean,
It
it's.
can't be that much of a
you got
surprise. We run,
over
You
100%
had to
error
run-
on that.
we run band camp every year. I can't.
Correct. I would think that would pretty much be
They
linear.
added elementary,
You know, going up at a certain monotone rate, hopefully, yeah. I mean,
they added elementary people into that program,
We,
which is
talked a
great, but
we talked a little bit about the idea that was, we had some middle school realignments, middle school allocations, and I think that's one area where the middle school had been putting some costs that I would like to get better adjusted in the budget.
put it in the wrong place.
So they were being captured somewhere else and you moved
Yes.
them in. Got it.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that you've got some middle school stipends being paid out of there, which really were not budgeted for where they should have been in the first place, and now we're looking to capture them in a more appropriate place. And some of their other expenses as well.
So shouldn't
So-
every, let's say, club advisor, every club advisor should come out of this accounts, correct? Across the district. It makes sense to me. Wouldn't come out of another section of the budget.
Well, with the exception that you know, if you have a sports club, that's different, right?
No, I said club.
Club, yeah.
I was
Yeah,
saying
I think that would
club
capture
to me is not
club
sports.
co-curricular, right? Music might be different, but no, club, I think it's fair.
And when we met with them, we actually said, you know, we're breaking them into all those categories, the ones that run your high school, but then there's academic clubs, which are great, they rigor, but not to forget, there are things that support the arts.
There are service
And some of
clubs
them
or
are
art clubs.
fun athletic things, and not necessarily competitive varsity
Right.
JV freshman sports. And so he said, you know, he asked them to, you know, diversify, make sure there's something for everybody, right? Makes sense.
And I don't mean to be disrespectful to Mr. Woodworth at the high school, but we've had this conversation before. We have new members on the board, but some of us have been around for a while, and this conversation has happened before with, and unfortunately, those two same groups are the groups that have gotten kind of washed along, and to me, it's embarrassing to have to, I'm not gonna turn them away, but we need to have that, some money for them over here.
But there is money in there for them.
It's not being
Is
given
there
to them,
not?
but it's not being given to them, Cheryl, are they not requesting it?
I think this
This is where I'm having a rub right now, because, you know, there's a page up saying that there's no money in this budget this year.
There's a GoFundMe page.
It is.
Those for me.
And they
it
are trying to
says,
raise money for
quote
their-
unquote, we do not have the money in the budget this year. Now, nobody's come here for this money. Nobody's asked for any money. Nobody's shown up here. I'm asking straight out, is there money in this budget?
Well,
Because
The
that looks
adjusted, the
bad.
adjusted budget is 13,000 more than was requested
So-
last year.
Dollar to dollar, there's more money.
That's embarrassing.
But we don't pass out the money. The building principals, souls, make those decisions.
So this gets, let me say, and it rubs me the same way it rubs you, in that regard, because this 1410, I gave you the reason that we don't take from other buildings, just, you know, I asked them to budget for it. Jeff knows now he can move money, they need to plan for the big number. Everybody put in your request. We also asked Mr. Woodworth when we met with him, you know, to make sure that what you're paying people is fair. You know, I don't wanna hear that your club's an $800 club, and that's a $200 club, and, you know, it gets a dollar, you know, thanks for doing it, but, you know, we don't have anything for you. And then to prioritize them, what are the ones you absolutely have to run your building, because they're not in the contract, like I said, I've been accustomed to seeing those things in a contract, so that's like, you're not even, but they're not. So that way, there's no negotiation as to what they get paid, everybody gets the same, we get what it says. And then, if you run a club, I said, is it a 40 hours, what do they get for 40 hours? You know, or 30 hours, what did I tell them, did I say 30, 40-hour club, whatever it is?
Yeah.
You know, make sure it's the same amount for, no matter what the club is. And then, you know, there's money there, so,
And then you get into, well, who determines whether I spend 30 hours in student senate at the middle school versus 44 hours at the high school?
There's some professional trust and collegiality in that, but I think the one thing is, I think you'd all be sensitive too, like, if I went to some of these elementary principals where they have money in their budget in this 1410 for their, and I asked them if they were gonna spend it, they're gonna say yes.
Right.
And they may not spend it, they're not just giving the money away. I'm gonna ask Kathy, should I ask Kathy Deotis if I can have her?
No.
But I think, you know, asking Jeff to look at it a little more globally and say, hey, this is it, everybody should send their request in by a certain date, and then I'm gonna start moving the money. Now, I think this has always been an issue.
I do not understand why this is an issue. We are
There's
13,000 above what they requested last year, and when they made that request last year, that was with the understanding that we would not be funding them anymore. So I'm not sure what the issue is, and I'm still kind of waiting
not
to
sure
find
either.
out what the 45.60.3 is right now.
Well, that one is at a level pretty much at 30,000 with the additional going into the 112 account, the salaries line. But it's there, and how it's allocated within the function, it is what it is. You know, but the money is there, right?
Well, but there should be more money in that function code right now, because that's the function code where we wanted more money put so that we could fund the high school students outside of our school board budget. And overall, there's 220, there's more money in this line than was even asked for, so I just can't figure it out because I don't have enough detail.
No, but the directive is clear. Look at it from a system level. There's money there, and make sure it gets to the kids.
Well, right, I'm just surprised that line wasn't bumped up when this whole budget was bumped up and transformed, because we knew that was gonna be an issue. So can we please just go back and look at it again?
No, we
Or
got
do need to make
that,
another
so-
adjustment?
To do that. And the last piece to Sheila's point, I want to be clear. No directive, I think the kids took it upon themselves, or was there some leadership, I don't know, to go to GoFundMe. I think the message was, you need to raise some money yourselves, and maybe we can match or something. And that's me looking at it from a very fair, I think, I think
And
that's
I
what they heard.
understand that, but the
know.
verbiage
In the paragraph.
in the paragraph is what bothered me because it was untrue.
Yeah, no, it's not true. I don't like, for instance, the same thing, I don't like it when they're standing out in front of a liquor store with a can, asking for money, saying the
We
school
agree
board
on
won't
that
buy me
also.
uniforms, right?
I
That's not
agree with
true,
that.
right? That's not true.
We agree on that also,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this was,
Yeah, no, I didn't like how it read either. I mean, unfortunately,
13,000 more is at the high school. Kim, you've said it, I'll say it, we can all say it. There's 13,000 more at the high school.
Oh, there is 13,000 more. Oh, okay.
Period.
I couldn't tell that from here.
This lack of detail.
Just-
but even whether there's 13 or 15 or whatever it is, we should be looking at this 1410 as a district and getting the money out to the kids if there's money there. Like, we
Yep.
shouldn't say no to somebody and then come back and tell you, oh, yeah, there was $15,000 that went to surplus, when, why are they asking you for $2,000 when we could have just easily provided it? So he has that, right? You have
I
that
mean,
flexibility.
From a historical perspective, I can see how that could be perceived, right? Because we didn't really budget for it last year. Right? I don't think we budgeted in the operating budget. I don't think anything would have passed. That doesn't mean it's not there or available at this point, right? But it wouldn't have been part of the budgeting. I don't believe that passed budget committee. However, that doesn't mean it's not there now.
We should find out if this group was actually had asked for it or denied it, and then therefore they took the leadership on their own to go out and create this fund me.
Right.
Because
I think they have some of that leadership amongst them, that they thought, we need to pull ourselves together and see what we can earn this year. I don't know where they got $8,000. I'm still kind of in a quandary where that came from. I think students did the page. I'm just guessing from the way it was written.
Is that
I
where it's
think-
up to 8,000?
Huh?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's great.
So they've got some money started from donations and,
Staying at the
Who manages that money once they get that?
I don't know that.
That's an interesting, I mean.
What
Yeah.
happens? What, do they get a check at some point from GoFundMe?
I know who should be.
Yeah, well, you would think, but
yeah, but if that was started as a private entity on their own,
Well, that's
I mean,
private.
we have no jurisdiction.
Doesn't say.
We get into booster problems with that too, with some of the activities, like, is it a school sanctioned booster club, and boosters, and we have people that are trying to become boosters, and it's tricky.
Yeah.
Because there's some hoops they have to jump through. We have some people that are looking to support some of our STEAM and STEM initiatives, which I asked Jeff to get that information to them, so they could set up, so they could do it.
We have, our high school does manage a number of accounts for, of different groups, and one of them came last year, so I can't remember the engineering, which one was it? The engineering?
The robotics club?
Yeah, they had done some fundraising in the past, and they had sort of a
Yeah.
revolving fund, if you will.
Oh, they had some, that's right.
They had some, and so that was handled under the high school activities, which is a separate, which is not part of our budget, at least not now. GASB has some interesting regulations. I won't bore you with it, but as of right now, we don't have to budget. That's not part of our budget. That's handled by the high school. So we've got funds that come into our district through into the specific district coffers. Perhaps it's a grant, and the high school handles. And you'll see in our annual report, you'll see a bunch of activity funds that are held by the high school, by the different schools, field trip funds, and things like that.
Yeah.
And then there's the third element altogether, which could be, I don't know. I don't know if someone is fundraising on their own, and if it's going where it's going, I really don't know. Theoretically, if someone's having a car wash, robotics, for example, and they might have a car wash, they might have I don't know, what do they do? Do they sell?
Bake sale,
Magazine sale.
sell wreaths, I don't know.
Those funds would then go in and be deposited into the high school activities account. Don't get confused with this activities account. It's sort of a revolving fund the high school maintains for
Middle
that, and that's
school
where we go. And then that would build up to fund a trip that they would be planning or
The
some.
middle school had one too.
event,
We had
yeah.
an internal account, so you could keep track of whatever you'd earned by selling, I don't know, popsicles this week.
Yeah, so from a technical perspective, those are under my office. Those are considered funds that are, they're not district funds to this, to that extent. They're funds held by the district, but they're not district funds. So in other words, if you have a student raising money and they're gonna be using that
Right,
to
student.
well, they're in our custody, but they aren't necessarily district funds per se. It's a
So they
tricky-
weren't raised by tax dollar.
That's correct. Yeah,
You're just a trustee agent.
just
in that capacity,
being
thank you.
the- Yes, Brian, you've waited patiently.
I just want to piggyback a couple things on what Sheila mentioned, because it kind of bothers me when the word's getting out that there's perceived cuts that never happened.
So there's no money in the budget.
There's no money in these budgets, and so whether it's the students or the teachers, shouldn't even be thinking like that. So I guess we gotta somehow increase our communication to let them know that, there is money. And the other thing is, I don't, maybe some of my board members can help me out, because I'm probably gonna screw this up, but I know that Jen Silva has brought up on several occasions about somehow we have to create a version of academics like they
Academic
have
booster.
for TMA, like they have for the athletic council. So is that what you're referring to, that you're,
There is a group that's
STEM's
looking to
trying
get
to do
started.
that.
And I
obviously
think
they have to
started
have all their nonprofit tax
Yeah.
ID kind of stuff.
Trying
And
to formalize whatever those regulations and things they have to do to become a booster, just like the TMA, or just like the
so
football
I think
boosters. And
that would probably help them, because from what I understand, there are a group of parents that are,
Yeah.
maybe you
Yes.
people know more about this than can help me out there, because
It's the fourth tier.
it's outside my bailiwick.
Yeah.
That's the fourth tier, because that's
Yeah.
outside the district
It's like
altogether.
TMA sponsors fundraisers
Right.
to help support the kids. So each of the kids has their own individual accounts. So when, like right now, we just finished up our calendar sales for the music calendars. And the kids, for every calendar they sell, they get a portion of that sale, and it goes into their own individual account, which.
I'm well aware of that.
Yeah.
Been there, been there, been there.
No, I
Well
think-
aware of that one.
I think what Brian's
But-
talking about is the STEAM night.
Yes,
Steam
it's
night.
theme night,
That
and
STEAM night
yes.
coming up that
So-
I keep watching and reading about, and it
Looks great.
honestly, it looks
It's
fantastic.
gonna
Yeah.
be great, yeah.
And I really hope the district grabs that and like puts it on the 10 network and all that stuff,
Absolutely.
because that, it's for the entire district. And I just think it's a phenomenal thing that we're doing. So I give that committee all the credit in the world. But they need funds.
Well,
That group needs funds. So that's another group that should have funds, because that's a district-wide thing. It's not, so
They
I don't
have
know.
some
How do you even, that would be the booster that you're talking about starting
They
for them,
wanna
right?
So
start.
that's in the works.
Yeah.
it could be, or
Yeah.
they could, there could be some funds internally as well by a club that raises the funds, that we're holding the funds. It could be a mix of all of those. So we have.
But are they all set? Because I know we've asked through you
Yeah.
several times to get back to them with what they need to do to set up.
Haven't heard anything, so I'll confirm and see where they're going. I thought that there was an issue with the sports, because they weren't sports related.
Oh, TMA, I mean, it's a marching band, they play at football games, but that's not sports either, really.
No,
I
yeah.
don't know if you're through are you through the athletic boosters?
No, we're our own
totally
individual
They've been
universe,
their own
yeah.
organization.
Forever,
Yeah.
forever.
So TMA, yeah, it's our own group, and
See,
like,
that's not it then, yeah.
yeah. And it started literally in the 80s. It was back when TMA was founded.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've got a note to follow up and see if I can get them in the right direction. It's an odd thing, because we typically don't have non-sports, non-music
Academic.
boosters. So it's nice
Right.
to have. So,
Because all the other, like, Biology Honor Society, Math Honor Society, they all run anything they do to fundraise, they run it through the internal funds at the school.
Correct.
I know
Yeah.
they do.
Yes, they do.
They don't come and ask for money, they raise money. Okay, any other discussion? Yes, Kristen?
Just to follow up on my point, if we don't know who's managing these funds,
What, the,
like a GoFundMe page, it comes in and.
it's private,
and-
it's not,
I know, but if they're promoting themselves as
Timberland.
an agency of our school and people are donating to that, assuming
It's
it's
gonna
going to
get to
go to
those
that
kids.
agency, and all of a sudden, this whoever's managing the funds decides, well, the appropriate thing is to take my board out to, you know, a really nice dinner and play a round of golf, and they do that. I mean, where does that oversight, and do we have any policy with
We would
regard
have
to
any.
that fundraising as opposed to, they're putting out their language that doesn't potentially portray the truth, and that we're saying there's no budget, or, you know, and now
Well, they
they're
don't have a
collecting
budget.
funds. Well, there's no, yeah, I mean, and now they're collecting funds, but then there's no oversight, so who's to say they don't collect the 8,000, spend it somewhere that really isn't an appropriate place to spend it, and now come back to us and say we need another 8,000 for X, Y, Z, and now,
Well, we certainly,
we doing
it's certainly
there?
well
So-
known, we know the GoFundMe page, I
Yeah.
found it, Jen found it,
I'm,
Sheila's obviously
I'm just
found it.
assuming, I mean,
Sarah
I'm just
found it.
asking that with this day and age, with the GoFundMe pages and all these other,
They should have a policy.
there should be some sort of something.
Yeah,
What-
my experience, and I don't disagree with you, my experience with this, it's very tricky with, even though they're affiliated, but they're technically unaffiliated.
Correct.
Right, so I've had hockey boosters, not in Timberlane, you know, buying, you know, $200 and $300 pairs of skates for kids, like, just some of them, not all of them, you know, like, having $100 a plate, that's where their banquet is, sorry, we're not affiliated, like, and so, you're doing it for the kids, and then you're raising the money, and is the money being spent correctly, but we can't tell them how to spend it, because they raised it.
But should there be some sort of policy that says if you're going to raise funds as a
We could
group or
not-
organization from the school, that you have to put a disclosure on anything that you do that we don't monitor? Because if not,
Yeah, I don't know how
That comes
enforceable.
back to us.
I don't know how enforceable.
That would be
No,
I would agree with that, is the enforceability of that. You could say, we want you to do that,
But-
and they could say, yeah, we'll take it under
fine.
advisement.
but the liability for us, if all of a sudden somebody goes and donates, you know, a group raises $10,000, and they go out and have a keg party, and it comes back on us, well, you knew that they donate, well, then we are not, if we say we have a policy, and they were supposed to put that they weren't associated, and we didn't know about it. I mean, otherwise, it looks like we're encouraging this if we
almost
don't
need
have
to
a
dis-
policy in place.
Almost need a disclaimer statement
Yeah.
on that GoFundMe page
And if
that
they don't
says-
put it, I understand you can't always enforce it, but if all of a sudden somebody stumbles across it and realizes this is a group that's coming through us or representing to be part of us, and they don't have this disclaimer, it's easy enough to contact them and say, put it on there, or, you know, I think
mean,
this needs to be looked into more with the
I think-
technology of today.
And I think our only teeth is we could say we're not going to accept the funds, you know, or we're not going to allow you to, you know, donate.
But
It's tricky.
But if it's private, we don't have that control, like we just said, but
I know.
if we require that
I
group
know.
to hold the disclaimer, and then they don't, or if they do, I'm just
And then, I
saying to
guess,
cover this
well,
group
playing
and what
devil's
we're doing
advocate, what happens if
budget-wise.
they don't? What if they don't put the disclaimer?
That's exactly,
It's unenforceable,
Right,
so.
it
It's not, but
is,
we're
but,
covered.
but we're at least
But-
covered that
right,
we
say,
had a
yeah,
policy
if
that they were
disclaimer on
supposed
there.
to.
If it's to cover us, then, yeah, I mean,
Put a
I mean-
disclaimer on there that says.
And then
what's
if we
not on.
find something, like stumble across something as we did, and if there's no disclaimer, you contact whoever's running that, or you contact GoFundMe and say, this disclaimer needs to be put on, and,
well, let's do our own disclaimer, right? This is not just about these.
oh, it's not, no, it's
I know, but
not,
I don't
I'm
want
just, I'm
anybody to
using
think
that as
this
an
is-
example,
this is
there's
not
so
about what-
many,
No.
no, I'm
We're
not,
not
no.
inferring it, we're not suggesting it, we're
Not
just
at
trying
all,
to.
absolutely,
get-
100%,
okay.
I'm using it as an example, that's all.
Nick, you had your hand up, I want to call on
Yeah, I
you,
was just
but-
wondering, like, I don't know if, what's the specific incident that we're talking about, or like this group that's doing the private funding?
So youth and government
It's a youth and
and
government.
model.
At the high school?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
model,
okay.
model UN? No, not model UN.
But it is, a
Harvard.
group that
You
goes
can go,
to
yeah, they're two
Harvard,
separate things, youth and government.
Harvard group.
So, yeah, I mean, if you put it, there's nothing technically wrong with them doing private funding, but if you were to do a policy saying that if you did private funding, that you couldn't just go out and spend it on, like, or you couldn't maybe receive a certain donation from the board, then that might be reasonable. Just because, like, if you're gonna do private funding, then they have to be that private group. They shouldn't maybe be able to, you know, if you do private funding, does that make you a booster?
I don't know,
Right, it's that gray area that you just don't know how to deal with, so.
I don't think
Should
it
I get
is.
I agree
legal
with, I
opinion on-
agree with Mrs. Savage that she, you know, we should maybe be able to do that policy.
The teeth, you have teeth in the use of the name, I would think, and you have teeth in uniforms.
You don't.
Don't own the name.
Well, if you're out and you're in a Timberlane uniform, raising money, are you raising money for, who are you raising money for?
Yeah, it wasn't the uniform, it was the name piece, right?
And this opens up a
Yeah.
lot of Pandora's boxes.
Yeah, Lee,
two things. So on the name, we could just trademark the name. Right?
I don't know if you can trademark, a public.
We went around on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Something to look
don't know,
into.
something to look into.
Even our
on-
T is really Temple.
All right,
I'm not even
let's
sure
not
it's
go
our
down that
owl.
road then.
We're gonna
Yeah,
take.
no, we'd lose.
Uh-oh.
But we could establish a policy. So these are school sanctioned clubs, right?
Yes,
We sanction the
sanctioned
club.
club, yeah.
So we could establish a policy that restricts private fundraising whose funds would be used to the benefit of the club. Any type of public fundraising or private fundraising would need to be sanctioned and approved by the Timberline Regional School Board.
So not to reinvent the wheel, we do have a boosters handbook with that's through this. We went through this a few years ago with athletics because we were giving gift cards to kids and
Yeah, no.
the kids had to give the gift cards back. That was not, it was almost like a cash.
Yeah.
It wasn't, we weren't doing it right. So there's a whole handbook. We may have to take a look at that and see if we should spill that into the arts and into academics and say, these are anybody that's looking, or any groups that are looking to support what we do here in the arts, athletics, or academics.
I just think somebody should be looking at these things before they're made public.
Well, and and Kristen's right about the technology piece, that's just exploded.
You know, that they
whole-
should be sanctioned by the superintendent, by the school
And if
board.
we don't sanction it, we
somebody
don't accept the funds.
with the words,
We wouldn't
what is
accept the
being-
funds
Well,
anyway.
we prevent the club from accepting those funds.
How are we gonna do that? How
Well,
would we,
the club is sanctioned by the school, right?
club is a school club, yes.
So their activities
Or-
are approved by the district.
Okay,
We prevent them from participation in activities if they're funding it through private fundraising that we haven't approved.
And part of that, to add on top of that, I agree with all what you're saying, is the fiscal agent component of that, is that, if you get this $8,000, at least for me, I would like to see that it go from the GoFundMe with the support of the group, they handed it on over to the district and it's all accounted for, and then this would be added, as an account that they would be able to spend
or into
in
the
addition
internal
to
accounts at the high school.
other budgeted funds potentially, and this would be used to augment this. It could, it would be a non-lapsing, revolving account, so that if they have money left on over the next year, that they would be able to use it, and it would just be tracked, part of our audit, all this other stuff.
Well, it's part of the internal thing they do at the high school, so all those organizations,
right.
there's
all the other
100 honor
societies
societies,
have
they
money.
have money, a little money, it rolls into the next year, and the student council, and
Well, can we do this? Can we investigate this
Yeah,
and have
let's-
Jeff come back at the next
Yeah.
meeting and say, like, this is a best practice for outside groups raising money that are not necessarily athletic boosters or even.
As long as it's known that there is money in there,
that they can go and ask at the high school level for funds.
I'm good on that.
Current
Well, I-
groups can
Well, I
do
got a
this.
feeling anybody watching is going to be knocking on the door tomorrow.
It's gonna be a line, 6:30, they're lining up.
And they hadn't raised $8,000, they'd raised about, $225 as of last night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
300.
yeah,
But-
but they had put their goal of 8,000, which to me meant, that would, soup to nuts, that's what it would cost them to go to Harvard and Concord and a couple of places they've been.
Right.
All right, so let's get our report back and see if we can get something. Good conversation though about that.
So Jeff, take a look, you meet with
Do
Angelo,
support clubs.
get the booster
Another
athletic
request for
handbook
action
and,
now, yeah.
all right.
I think the issue was that Council for Timberline Athletics has a very slick way of doing it, but it didn't seem compatible with academics, which there's gotta be a way.
I'm sure somebody else is doing it, so.
Warrant articles, anything new? We are still, once I present the CIP to you guys, I think we would really be getting into the meat of discussing what on there we might want to put as a warrant article. We know the contract, we know the citizens petition,
What about
capital reserve.
well, the capital reserve, the annual one that we
Yeah,
put
yeah,
in
yeah.
there, but I'm also looking at, what are we going to do with the PAC relative to the building?
As I just said, when I present the CIP, that's in the CIP. So when we see that whole chart laid out, I think it would behoove us then to look at that particular project, have Tom here, and address some of the things Brian's concerned about, is that price, what's that price gonna include? Where do we go with that? Are we gonna warrant article it? Are we gonna figure out another price? Because the price went from 90 to
400 and change.
400 and change. And
Different
ended
job,
up with
but
a different, I know it's a different job, it was doing more, et cetera. But we're gonna need to start on that, I would think, definitely next month.
Yeah, I mean, and the first part of that is that on what you were talking about, Brian, is finding the right cost of
Right.
what we're gonna put in there.
Right. We
And
need to
getting
task-
those cost estimates now so that when we go to the warrant, we can have
We
a
have to
hard
have a
number that we're
figure,
looking
yeah.
at with some kind of contingency based upon that.
Yep, exactly. So, just to keep us aware, we have those things still to do. That's a big job for us, to make sure we get that wording correct. October 1st enrollment figures are here.
Okay, I sent these, well, I think, get these today, right? I mean,
Yep. So total is 3,472, is that correct?
I believe that's correct. That's on the total all to the far
Total-
right, about
Yep, total all.
about 2/3 of the way down the page, on the right. Sandown now has the most students in the district at 1,044, followed by Plastow, 1,037, followed by Atkinson at 787, followed by Danville at 598. And there's a breakdown by school, by grade. Notice
This
the-
is as of October 1st.
Yeah, this is typically the date that you'd report on,
Right.
attendance for the year. If you look down the left side, elementary enrollments by school, and that also includes the tuition-in students.
Dr. Metzo, how do you categorize somebody that's at like TLC and on the bottom part is that, you got like 92 in there, since TLC is a superset of all districts, I mean, how does that break down?
Well, what I can tell you is that they reformatted the enrollment chart this year, and for that very purpose, is because before when you looked at it, they only did the schools, the elementary by school, so it really wasn't an accurate depiction of where the students were coming from, what their hometowns were. This report allows you both. So yes, so what it means is that there are 92 students at Sandown Central, but they will be made up of mostly some of the preschool in all 4 towns, and all of Sandown's kindergarten and preschool. So
the students are captured elsewhere, and just that they're saying out of all those other places out there, we have identified 92 of them that are going to.
that's right. So
The
this
top 2/3 of the page gets you by town, and then the bottom breaks it down.
Because this also covers in-district transfers. We have kids who are living in Atkinson who want to go to Plastow. So they're also, so what you're getting are the actuals by town, so you, as a school board member, can see how many kids are coming from your particular towns, but then there's the breakdown of where they actually are in the buildings.
So if I'm reading it correctly, if I look at 4th grade at the top of the page, Atkinson, there's 52, but at the bottom of the page is 51. So there's one student from Atkinson going to
That is correct.
another school.
Excellent, excellent analysis.
So you might have had the page earlier today. Did you? Yeah, a piece of the
Yeah,
page.
I was,
Oh.
yeah.
So that's where we are at the minute. That doesn't mean that by December 1st, the numbers aren't, they all move over to Atkinson.
And I think just for your peace of mind, right, so any transfers, any in-district transfers, we typically, I meet with them, and ask the questions, why don't you want to go where you live, and what makes the place you want to go so great, and the answers are so different, and they have to do with grandparents, and drop-off, and pickups, and work, and neighborhood friends, and different things, so we've been able to honor every single one of those, and we typically put them on a contract, which basically says, transportation, you're pretty much on your own unless you work something out with Sandy and get to a stop that brings them to that particular school. You're expected to go and participate in those sorts of things in the event that we'd ever have to ask you to go back to your home school. We've never had to do that, and every parent comes in, signs the contract. So they have a contract, and then the expectation is that they can stay there. So if they get into 2nd grade, we're gonna let you stay for the rest of your time there. It's not like, oh, you only get to go to 2nd grade, and then you have to go back to, so we work with families. A lot of times it's siblings too, or when they move, one had already gotten in. We typically, we're not having kids in different elementary schools unless the parents wanted that. If they'll be in the same school. So we typically, siblings get priority. We try to make room. Every now and again, a school might be full. So that's when I would come to you and I'd say we'd like to waive a policy and have one more student than perhaps what the policy is, or we'd ask maybe to add a para, just to try to work with a family. Most of the times, families are understanding. They know there's a cap at some point, especially kindergarten. Kindergarten's, at some particular schools may fill up quicker than others, for all those reasons. Where I came from, it was a lot clearer. Everyone was trying to navigate towards the school with the highest test scores, right? That is not true about Timberlane. It's really about families and what they need, which is really great. And and they do a really great job explaining or talking about, you know, what makes the school special that they're selecting. It's never about where they don't want to go, it's always about where they want to go and why, which is great. That was a different experience for me, too.
Yes, Kim?
Just to give a little historical perspective. So we're now at 3472 for our enrollment as of October 1. Looking at enrollments from last spring, we were at 3603. So we're down 131 students this year overall in the district. The other place I look is Sandown, because I'm worried about Sandown. Sandown's also down, surprisingly.
They're down a couple, I think.
Well, no, they're more than that. Sandown North is down from 353 to 335. And TLC is down from 182 to about 160. It depends what number you're looking at.
But
So-
tomorrow it's back up again. You know, that happens at TLC. They come, they
Right,
go. they-
TLC.
Well, yeah, but we were looking at this whole issue with crowding in Sandown North, which doesn't appear to be that big an issue, but we are still looking at that declining trend overall, which NESDEC has been saying we're gonna see, which we're still seeing. The other thing that relates to this is, I know last spring that we requested a SPED trend report for the district, and I still have not seen that.
Yeah, we're still not, well, first of all, in terms of memberships, I believe, did we eventually?
Yep.
So we have
We're members
NESDEC
now.
membership for this year. We're still completing the special ed audit that Beth Rincon came in, right? We had some turnover in the special ed department. I've made it clear to you, like, that's the one concern I have in terms of administrative support. So we're wrapping that up. I know we have NESDEC, we're getting the NESDEC enrollment projections, right? And so, and then that would be the next piece of that, you know. And I know people will tell you they can do it any time of the year, and that's a candidate, that's an answer. If you call up and say, can you do it? Yeah. What's the practical piece of when they can do it, right? So that we still have
they
to
have
figure
all
out,
the
but I
numbers.
asked Susan, I'm letting Susan, Susan's in the role now. So if we can just wrap up, if you just let us wrap up the rest of that first audit. That was a lot of work, as you know, because Beth came in, Rincon did a great job explaining it to you. And then we'll get to the second piece of that in terms of those reports.
So can we, is that on our back burner list someplace, Kathy? The SPED trending report?
I don't think it is.
Did it get?
No, Beth Rincon came in and gave, there's two different,
Yeah, that's- I
remember the
know,
one where there was,
that-
what do we call them? Remember there was, there weren't discrepancies, there were,
Variances.
it was a
I
word
think
they
there were
used.
variances. I think
Yeah, or whatever, and there was a lot of work to clean those up in the files and those sorts of things. So they give you a whole bunch of work to do to clean up, and then they come back and make sure, and they spot check to make sure you've done all that. So that, we're doing that, she's finishing that up. It's a lot of work, a lot of paperwork. The other thing, in terms of, and I know, Kim, I know you're using the same numbers, but I caution that a lot of times people are using 2 and 3 different numbers. I know you're using the same numbers, and I'm not debating your numbers, but we have NESDEC projections, we have what the principals put on those budget sheets, we have what the real ones were, we have ADM, we have, I think this you can take to the bank. This is really who's here, right?
On October 1st.
On October 1st of this year.
Well, this is
Now
Changes. Only
what's
on that
really
day.
here as of April 2018, because these
All
are
right,
Oh,
your
yeah,
what was
yeah,
the
so
number,
we're
Kim?
down
What was the number, what's the discrepancy, the difference, one?
3603.
3603 down to 3472.
Yep. As of April, it was 3603,
Yeah.
so, across the district.
And was that an ADM, where did you pull that number? Is that an ADM number, or?
Well, that's what you
This
did.
was something you handed to us
Gave us
last
to-
April.
That's what I mean, like, is that the same kind of report as this? I'm thinking it is, because of the number you
I'm
gave me.
thinking this is your enrollment report, and I'm assuming this was your enrollment, this is the TRSD enrollment. as
That's
of-
who we had in those, yeah,
That's what I'm assuming that was, yeah.
because ADM numbers are a little different, as you know.
Right, yeah, no.
So we're down 160-ish?
131.
131.
Of that, 56 is in the high school.
So the graduating class,
Yeah, that's predictable, because you look at a class,
Yeah,
and,
you can see
you look at
those
the 8th grade
crossing
class
over.
coming in, I mean, this is not rocket science, right? You look at the 8th grade class coming in, you look at the 12th grade coming out, and
The 12th
This-
grade class coming out was close to 300, and
right,
that was a large class.
and then it dropped down to 202, then it goes back up again, and,
So this, if you follow the last, again, 6, 7 years since I've been here, like, we've made some staffing reductions at the middle school. Those middle school students are now into the high school. So it's the same, that's that same enrollment. It's really more 6 to 12. It's not really as much, although you can find some reductions in elementary, but most of it is in that 6 to 12, and those kids are now in the high school. We reduced the number of teams, so at the middle
Right.
school over a period of time. So 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade, as these smaller groups have gone through. 'Cause I don't know what the biggest number was at the middle school one time, but it was well over 1,000, right?
Yes.
And now you're looking at, you're at 800, it was like 1,100 or something. I mean, that's a lot of kids in 3 grades.
I think when Kristen was there, it was 8,000 in a class. A lot of kids, a lot of
Is that a
bodies.
few years ago?
Build another hallway, cinder blocks.
Last year.
We built some additions and we added some teams, and now you reduce the teams. You don't need 4, 5-person teams. You only need
Yep.
3,
So,
4-person teams.
Mike Hogan did a great job helping do that, so it wasn't like a shock to the system. We did that systematically, and I think now we're into the high school, so looking at that moving forward as we're looking to try to make the budget numbers work, level funded, et cetera. We gotta look at class sizes, and we gotta look at where some
Seems to
reductions.
be
we made.
100, 100, 100, just rounding, 100, 100, 100. And, I make you a graph and say, it's not 100 from the 9th grade. It's all 100 scattered throughout, so it impacts how big the classes are, and 100, 100, 100, 100.
But if you look back, and in theory, if you just kept the classes, right? I mean, look at the class sizes, all the way back to grades 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can take any 4 consecutive years in a row, add them up, and then you're not at 1,100 anymore. Some of those you're at 1,000,
Right.
Yeah.
right? And you're at 750, you're at 700, so.
Well, I want to get the sped trend report back on the burner if we can. Thanks, Kim, for reminding us about that again.
And all I asked was let me just wrap up
Yep,
the one she's
let's
doing,
get-
and then we can ask NESDEC to do that.
Yep.
But she's gotta be very much involved in getting that information to them, right? It's number of ed plans and all, I mean, maybe it's simple,
It is simple.
Yeah.
I mean, there were only 9 questions. We went through this in 3 or
Right.
4 budget questions.
Right.
Just for clarity, so this is the numbers that go up to DOE for their reports that are due at 10?
for their October 1st report,
Okay.
and so there's different reports during the different time of the years, but this seems to be the big enrollment number day is always October 1. I think that takes into consideration people they think moved in and took some time to
Settled, right.
register for school and those sorts of things. So
Showed up the
it
first
seems like a
day.
safe date.
But again, it doesn't, if you look at the bottom, the note, it doesn't include every student that the district is responsible for. These are just the physical bodies that are in our buildings. You'll see at the bottom that there are some enrollments
Right.
statuses that are not included on this.
Right.
So
And we
this
don't
would be
count
not the equivalent of the DMR, is that
Right,
ADM-R?
Yeah, the ADM is a
Right.
little different. I mean, it's just different. It could work either way for you, it just matters how it's calculated. I would imagine the ADM is probably lower, right?
Yeah,
Probably. And
yeah.
the DOE's ADM lags by almost over a year before they post it.
Yeah, and this goes back to Donna asking some questions, and I think there was a mystery. We had to chase down like 70 students, and that was a lot of work trying to figure out who are
they
these,
are.
where are these kids, who are they? It was, we were able to do it. I mean, Ken was able to uncover the mystery, but it was hard, homeschool kids and different kids that we're responsible for that didn't turn up necessarily. And the DOE even had some trouble reconciling numbers, because we were asking the questions, they didn't know the answers. So like, you need to figure that out. I'm like, oh, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, anything else in that? We'll move on to policies. I'd like to know what the baseball score is, but
Anybody know? What was it?
the good guys,
JD Martinez just hit a home run.
On any,
okay,
And they could have had Giancarlo Stanton. Why were they thinking with J.D. Martinez?
I like him, stop. Policies, sorry, policies, we are on first read of, Lee, you wanna take this?
Sure, why not? We are on first read of BGB, EBBD, EEA, EA, and EFA. Now I know my ABCs. BGB, what did we change there? There was a removal of language for a 2/3 vote requirement.
Right.
I think that was unanimous at the policy committee.
Yep.
EBBD, that was,
It's a required policy.
it's a required policy, and there were minor changes to that. Adding in designee, I think, was the
Yeah,
biggest
and
change.
the legal references.
Yep. EEAEA was a required policy, and we made it consistent with what NHSBA recommends. And then EFA is a confusing one. We grappled with this on policy committee. It was originally a food service meal account balances policy that we had in place. It was repealed, and now EFA, according to the coding system, is actually availability and distribution of health funds, of healthy foods, sorry.
yeah.
And this is a required policy that we did not have. And it's in line with NHSBA recommended language. So I'll make a motion to accept these for first read.
Motion by Lee.
I'll
Do we-
second it.
Kristen is seconding. Again, take these home, look them over. Had a really good meeting about these particular four at the policy meeting, so. They'll come back in a couple of weeks, or if you've got some question you wanna send it either to Jen or to Lee, or to me. We'll hopefully take it back, talk about it. All right, so the motion on the floor to accept for first read, to move on to second read. All in favor? Unanimous, 8-0-0. Thank you very much, Lee, for that. Resolutions. Do we have anything on that? Did we get something before?
It was just a deadline if you wanted to get one in.
Yeah, if we
as a-
want a resolution to go in, I don't know if any of you have looked at some of those that they've had at their, I think it's a January meeting they have. If you're interested in doing that, we're gonna run out of time.
That's right, I think today was really the deadline to finalize it, for the submission deadline, which was November 1st.
First, I think it is. So, if you look at some of the sample ones, they're pretty encompassing, they're not very specific, so. If there's nothing there, we'll move on to administrators' report.
Excellent.
Dr. Metzl?
Well, we just have, we have a retirement, unfortunately. Joanne Albert, who's been our computer science teacher at the high school for the last 7 years, needs to retire, and so she's asking for your blessing. It was as of, be effective November 1st. I believe you have a letter attached,
We
right?
do.
Okay.
We hear a motion to accept the retirement with
I'll make a motion to accept the retirement.
Second it.
Kristen, so motion by Sheila, second by Kristen, with regrets and best wishes, and
We wish you well.
wish her very, very well. All in favor? 8-0-0.
Thank you very much. Okay, administration report, you good? I'm still doing it,
You
right?
are.
I went to the personnel first,
did
I'm sorry about
first,
that,
that's all
okay.
right.
The read file update, yeah, actually Kathy, but we spoke with council about a read file process, and our attorney was in full agreement that the read file should be kept in the SAU office, viewable during normal business hours, as the students or staff rights to privacy outweigh the convenience of the board members. That was for informational only, but there's a read-only file available. Facebook does not provide an option to turn off public comments. I know there's a bunch of words that can block what people can say, so if you need more than that, Ken's here filming the meeting tonight, he could tell you a little bit more about it, but we did explore it quite, to try to get those comments turned off. I think Ms. Silver had asked us to do that.
Yeah.
And we have tried a number of times to not, I know we have some media sites where nobody can comment, but that was a problem. Do you need more detail on that, or?
You wanna hear some more stuff about that, or? Sheila's saying yes, so come on up, Ken,
Okay,
thank
thanks,
you.
James, you want to film? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, put that,
I'll have the
seat
game
belts
on.
are tightened. No,
flip it
that's
over
the
to
only
Camera
problem.
work tonight, Madam Chair. Top notch.
There you go.
Raise the bar for Dean. All right, so Facebook,
He's in
as Dr.
Italy.
Metzler was talking about, you cannot block comments on a public
Facebook page like ours, and all school districts use public Facebook pages, you can use a comment word bank, if you will. And what we did is we do what some other districts do, which is you just copy and paste the 1,000 most used commonly words. And if anybody uses one of those words in the comment, it gets subject to moderation, which means that only they and their Facebook friends can see it.
There are 1,000 words.
Well, you can put in probably more, but there's lists out there, like the 1,000 most commonly used words in the English language.
Like
Like
congra-
copy and paste,
like-
and like and, a, the.
The,
So it's hard to get around that.
Like, congratulations.
Congratulations. So that's how we do it. Every district out there either has comments they allow or uses this word bank to kind of moderate as best you can. But there is no like on-off comments for pages. There is for groups. So if you're familiar with Facebook groups, you can shut off comments for those, and that's not appropriate for like a school district to use a group. Pages, you can put in contact information, you can put in address. Groups are more for people of like minds to share, geographic region information or topics. It's not really, I've never seen a school set up as a group in Facebook.
So so when you're looking at the school page, and it shows there's a post up there, and then it shows 4 comments, but if you click on it, you can't see it because
Correct,
they're
yes.
blocked, and it's only if you know
Well,
that
they're
person.
moderated, correct. If you were
So-
friends with the people that made those comments, you would see
You would
them.
see it. So
Oh.
if it says 4 comments and you click and there's only going to show 1, it's because you're somehow
Friends with that
connected to that
person.
person. So just
You can
for
see your own comments
clarification.
and your friends, basically, correct.
okay, that answers some stuff.
Got it?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay on that?
I bring to you tonight this is a parent request. We have a current 10th grader. I think I can do this publicly because I'm not going to go into great detail other than to tell you. This is a person that moved here from out of state last year and did their 9th grade year here. They're going to be moving to Salem soon, so they told us, but they want to stay the rest of the year. This is a spectacular kid, doing great, has already made one transition. They're saying, please let her stay, let him or her stay the rest of their sophomore year. And I think they're anticipating transferring as a junior to
That's correct,
Salem, but they
yes.
just wanted our permission to stay. So I wanted to bring that to you, to ask you, is it okay to let them stay? Because typically, I normally would have to say no, but this request kind of struck me in a way that, well, just a great kid, so I'd need action if that would be
Need
something to
action,
do.
so we entertain a motion.
Why would we I'm just curious, why would we normally say no?
Well, because they would eventually be living in Salem, so we'd be asking another district to pay tuition if they were gonna stay, or we'd be asking them for tuition, it's very expensive, so we're just saying, they're here. I don't even know their exact move date.
Yeah.
I know it's before the mid-year point. If it was the second half of the year, we would just, I wouldn't bring it to you, they'd just stay, right? That's, after, but they're just honest, and they told us up front, and no surprise, they have a great kid as well. We're lucky that this particular student's with us. We'd love to be able to keep them through their senior year, but that's their plan, and I had needed to bring it to you to get your permission because it's someone that doesn't necessarily live in the district at some point in the near future.
So I'll make a motion to allow the student to remain in the district through their sophomore year.
I'll second.
So motion by Lee and second by Sarah. Any other discussion? These aren't the first of these we've had. Okay? Okay, all in favor? 800.
On behalf of the family, really thank you, and it's the right thing, and that's one of the things that's been great about this board, because a lot of boards do not do that. All new faces, still doing the same thing that the previous people that sat in your seats, which is great. A lot of other districts
Brian
say.
and my face is old.
Well, I'm just telling you, a lot of districts do not do that, so that's pretty awesome.
If they're an active and contributing member to the school
It's
population,
important.
Let 'em-
I wouldn't
That's
bring
a
it to you
huge
if they weren't.
transition.
I would say no. That's, I mean, because that'd be the right thing. So, typically, years past, a lot of times, trip requests, we had presentations. This is a presentation that you've seen in the past. It's a trip to Montreal. The middle school is seeking permission for their annual student trip to Montreal. The trip and itinerary has been vetted and approved by SLT. Policy IJOA requires school board approval. The trip is May 3rd and 4th of 2019, so next spring. Students would need to be excused from classes on Friday, May 3rd. Materials about the trip are in your packets, and we need your action to be able to approve the trip, and that's that.
Yeah, it's a,
I'll make a motion to approve the trip.
I'll second it.
Motion by Sean and second by, I'll give it to Kristen this time. This is a trip that Madame has done for many, many years. I was just happened to be here at SLT yesterday as she was doing her presentation at SLT, always beautifully done, so I hope they have a good time and she can keep the cost way down. She always works hard to keep the cost so the parents can allow them. This is for 8th graders, 8th grade only, so. Any other comment or question, or if not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Great, thank you very much.
And that is including waiving the day on
Correct, that's what I put in the
Friday.
motion.
For
yeah.
Friday, the May 3rd.
Yep.
Procedure update, this is for your information, SLT has updated, actually adopted the procedure IHBI-R regarding the procedure for alternative learning plans. The policy itself is slated for the next policy meeting, so we'll get those all aligned. I believe you have that. So a lot of times when we, people that are new to the board, so you do the policies and we do the procedures, so the SLT would do the procedure. And a lot of times the board never saw the procedures unless you looked on, so we typically bring them to you as we update them. So when you update policies, we try to update procedures. This one's a little out of order because the procedure.
Well, this was because part of the updating of the policy required pulling out the procedural parts from the policy.
Right.
To put it in procedure, and so the policy section is going before policy at their next meeting.
Okay, because it's
So
it could be a
basically,
revision.
the policy contained procedural language.
Correct. One of the mistakes that we made years and years and years ago, a lot of our policies were all embedded with procedures. So we spent some time trying to pull out procedures out of policy.
So
we're
this one will
getting
be
that.
in, this policy will be in our next meeting, I think.
Correct.
It is, it's on that agenda.
The PAC concert dates, the PAC concert dates brochure is in your board packets. I noticed that some of you were looking at that earlier, it fell out of your, what it was put in there, so you have that. And finally,
Ken?
thank you.
It's really nice, really, really nice. I hope these are around town too. This is a beautiful, beautiful brochure. Shows some great stuff at pretty low cost, some of them are, to just, and of course our own plays and festivals and some really cool things here that they put on, so. That's that, if you were interested in any of that.
And finally, at the request, I guess I requested last night, we didn't get an opportunity to go through the goals for both districts, so I asked both Sue and Brian and Kim and Jason, the SAU chairs, and then Karen and Jason, the Hampstead people, if it would be all right just to, we normally wait for the SAU to, we're not waiting for the SAU, let's get the goals, because we can't just wait any longer. I had asked you a couple of times, and I appreciate every one of you, at one point or another has either sent me something, said something to me, asked, about the goals, we kicked and punched them, and hopefully you see, what you sent alive and well in this document. Kathy did track changes, so to make it even easier to pull out kind of what you sent, it's in blue. Not everything was literally word for word, but I said, let me try to wordsmith or kick and punch with Kathy actually to get them into the goals and have them make sense. So hopefully you see your suggestions alive and well in there. I'd be looking for you to approve these, so unless there are additional recommendations, to approve these so that we can formalize these, get them online so people can see what we're actually working on in both districts, but specifically for Timberlane.
Can we get a motion on the floor to accept, and then we'll entertain questions or comments?
I'll make the motion.
So a motion by Brian to
I'll
get these
second.
on the floor, second by Sarah. Questions, comments about any specific ones? There are a lot of goals here. We did add, I appreciate those people that took some time and did add some things in, and
Yeah, just about everybody.
good, thank you. Hearing no questions. I'll call for a vote. All in favor of adopting these policies, goals for the superintendent? 800, thank you very much.
Thank you, and again, thank you for your contributions, and regular updates, I guess, whatever as we go.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So that's it for the administrator's report. The personnel report I did out of order, and maybe your committee report.
Committee reports, thank you. Yeah.
Just before you leave that, I'm sorry, go back to the original thing. So you got feedback from O'Shaughnessy that the legal folder will stay upstairs in Kathy Belcher's office?
The read-only, the read-only.
The read-only folder?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's available,
Normal business hours.
on business hours?
Now, listen,
Okay,
if you make an appointment,
yeah,
right, at 6 o'clock or something, I mean, we'll see what we, for board members, obviously, right? But that, it was to have that not bouncing around, so we'll accommodate, whatever, just speak to Kathy and we'll work it out. We just don't want it floating around down here and,
No, I would agree, it shouldn't be floating around down here, but if Kathy says, if I say, Kathy, can I see that? She's giving it to me, I'm looking at it, when I'm done, I give it back to her. She knows who has it.
yeah, that was, the recommendation was to not do
Yeah.
that.
Well, the recommendation is to put it in a locked safe and nobody ever see it,
I know.
you know that it's safe.
I know, but if you came in at.
No, that wasn't.
If you came in
No,
at.
but if you
listen,
ask a lawyer to any kind
I
of
know.
question like that, they're gonna
Be
say.
careful.
But Sean,
I rephrase.
but Sean, if you said, I'm gonna be here at 7:15, and,
Yeah,
and you're
good,
upstairs, whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No,
She
and
is
I do
busy
understand
down
that.
here, and I want,
Yeah.
she does all this stuff, so, but
Okay.
she will try to accommodate us. And I've thought that all along, but,
Yeah, we don't wanna be like, I worked on a day, I can't see it, but it is pretty, some of the stuff in there is very private.
Right.
That's the reason it has to go in there, but.
okay, committee report, sorry, Kim.
How are we gonna know when there's something in there, since the
Yeah,
school
that's
board
what I
does
was-
not seem to be
Yeah.
privy to legal letters that
That's a
are
good
going
point.
out under, regarding the school board?
Yeah, because I knew there was one in there, and I told you guys that there was one in there. That's the last I knew of it. Is there any way we
Anything
can,
that gets added to that folder should just be a blanket statement, email the entire board and saying, I've added a new document. Probably give a topic to what it is to, not disclosing
well,
the,
be, careful about
but
it,
so that we know what it is, and then just,
if we want to.
everybody got it and knows that when they come in, they can
Is that
look at
possible
it.
to do? And one more thing.
I know, that's, the only thing is, I don't wanna set up an expectation and then not meet that, so it should be simple, right? We just stuck something in, like, all right, so what's the next move? All right, send an email to the board, or is it, and then if I throw it on just the chair, and then the chair doesn't get to everybody, and then somebody doesn't know about it, that doesn't work,
So
right?
that's where I would think, is that something like that should just be a blanket. I mean, for you, for the SAU to send it to the chair, for the chair to forward it to all of us is, to me, is a step that's not needed.
Well, I'm here on Tuesdays to
I
set
agree.
the agenda. I could ask then. Kathy, can I see the file?
I'm okay with the
There's
read
something in
file
there?
update, read
That's-
file
just-
updated.
yeah.
It's kinda like when we get
Just a blanket.
correspondence. An email goes out, school board correspondence, right?
There's a
And
read,
that-
there's
that's
an
working
update to
fine.
the read
So this would
file.
be read file updated.
That's
Yeah.
it. Subject line, read file update.
Doesn't
If
even
you
have to
see
have
read
anything else in
file,
it.
read file updated, you know something new's in there.
Right. And just when you put something
give
in,
that
that
a
goes
try.
out, end of
Yeah.
story. You don't even need a subject,
Doesn't
just
even need-
something
I
in
don't
there.
want it the
I
subject.
know where you're
I
going
don't know.
with it, but
Yeah,
that's
just
kinda
basically,
slippery.
it's like in a text that something's there,
Yeah,
equivalent.
just so you know,
I
if you're
can
in
do
the
that
area
when
and
I
wanna come
in
check it
to
out, you can.
double check it.
Yeah, the spirit of the read file is not to hide something from everybody. The spirit is to protect the privacy
Right.
of it, not to keep it
Absolutely.
from you, so that should work. That should work.
Let's
And
try
we can
that.
reevaluate, we'll see if it works.
Let's try that for a couple weeks.
Okay.
Okay, committee reports. CIP, I practiced in front of SLT, and I'm ready on November 1st to show you the document, although we've seen it, some of us have already seen it. And we'll talk about the priorities and have Tom here and have Ken here and have Jeff here to help us walk through what these projects are. It's sitting at about 1.9 million, I'll tell you that much, with about 350,000 in technology, so that brings down the facilities maintenance kinds of capital projects down to about 1.6. We gotta work on it. We have to work on that list a little bit, so that's what I've done this week.
Can I say something about that? Just
You
quickly?
can.
I won't go too far, just in the spirit of consistency, so if you see anything that's a CIP item that's actually in a building level budget, it's because they made it fit in the number they already had. So there wasn't like, this is my building level budget, oh, and by the way, I got CIP stuff, so, and I'll just say, it was mostly specific to technology, because there were certain things, he said, these were things that are vital, most important, even though they're on the CIP. We have to do this, so
we
he
can
found it in
check
last
them
year's number.
Yeah.
So what did that mean? Well, you had to do what you just did with your budget. Certain things had to be brought down to make the numbers work.
Right.
Right.
So I'd like to have you have the document in front of you. And I want to make sure, I don't want to run off another whole copy of the the Word document, Kim. Unless, I think we should don't you think we should have one for Kristen and one for Sheila, as new members of the board so they can see the Word document? Yes?
Which Word document?
For
are
the
you-
CIP,
The whole plan.
the whole plan.
The,
The big plan, which I believe is that binder.
Not the whole,
no, not the.
No,
no,
this is
those
for
are the
one
want a
project.
binder. I don't want a binder.
it's about 15 pages. It says who the makeup of the committee is, a
Oh,
timeline when
oh,
we're gonna
Oh,
meet.
I've seen
So-
that, it says
oh,
City
there.
of Peabody in the corner.
Huh?
I swear to God, go into the, go in, I've looked.
Anyway, I'll
It
have
says
copies
City
of that for you.
Peabody in the
Yeah,
corner.
I wouldn't
Said
make,
it right. It's
I
not
wouldn't
Peabody, right?
make
It's
copies
Peabody.
for the whole board, that really just kind of, no.
I don't wanna keep making more copies. I want us to just see where we're headed here, so
Yeah.
Right,
that's what I'll
yeah.
do. We didn't have curriculum? Do we have
No, we didn't
curriculum? That's all I have. Brian, anything? You got a facilities thing coming up?
No, I don't have one coming, we have to get one coming up because of what
Right.
what Sean mentioned about the PAC, and other things. But what I do serve on a budget committee here, and it was about the easiest budget committee meeting I think I've been to in my life. It's kinda
Nothing on
nice.
the agenda?
Well, no, it's kind of nice when everything's level funded, so two people came in, one 700 under budget, and the other one, I think, 7,000 under budget. And then there were members on the budget committee that they've politely grilled them. I said, boy, it's good we don't have any people that are over budget getting these kind of questions, but, so obviously, the building principals have been going through the superintendent's office, and they've got the word, and it's coming right through level funding, so it makes for a nice, very quick meeting. I think the whole meeting was an hour, so it was very nice.
And have they had all their tours?
They did not have all the tours, so I think
One on the last Mondays.
they had,
All at
they've only had one tour.
Atkinson was Monday. And then
Oh.
we've got one more, which is
One
Sandown.
more.
Well, that's the second tour then. You went on the second
I
tour.
went on the second tour.
But there's one more.
Okay, it's one more,
One more.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's been two tours, yeah.
Good.
So,
Anything else? Sarah, anything? Any
No,
work?
no.
Kristen, I gave you, I put at your place the safety stuff. I was hoping you would take a look at that. That's a report the state puts together, so you could have for your stuff. Sheila?
The tour, it was great.
Good.
Gonna take the next one. I will be at senior night tomorrow night for football, band, cheerleaders. But that's on my agenda.
Lee?
Policy committee meets on November 1st, and we're gonna be reviewing IHBF. I just learned that tonight.
And some others, I
There you
think.
go.
others.
It's 12 on it right now. Yeah.
There's 12?
12?
Can we start at 5?
We'll start at 6, and I bet you we'll get all 12 done. We'll see. Sean?
I got none.
Kim?
No, I don't have anything.
Strategic plan, steering committee, no.
No, there is no.
No, I just rephrase, let me rephrase. The 3 groups that we're putting together. Have we got any word on whether those 3 groups have started their
well, one is
team building?
facilities, yeah.
One's
One is-
facilities, one's culture and community, and one is
Curriculum.
curriculum. We need to get an update on that.
Yeah, we will.
We'll put that on the list someplace.
We talked about the default construction.
I've got that on my list.
Okay, sorry.
Yep. Correspondence files going around, there's no vendor, other business, default. We need to get started on the default. I'd like to hear a motion that states we direct this, something like this, we direct the superintendent to direct the business manager to begin a preliminary default. And then be able to present something so that some of us who have that ability can start digging in.
Before you, and in the spirit of just open and honest, what, Kim and I mean, I've had several discussions, I've asked her to kind of assist.
What?
Kim and I were talking about this I was in over the weekend, because I'm trying to get that number, I'm trying to get that number, like, where is it, so, because we traditionally have waited too long. You know, that number has always come out after the budget number, and I'd like to kind of get an idea.
That's why I was bringing it up tonight.
Perfect.
Get started on it.
Yeah. Well, I just happen to be
Ahead.
Saturday, looking at RSAs, there's some laws that have changed, because I guess we have the discussion, what I was confused with was the voted number versus what you've adjusted in looking at default numbers. I was just trying to get some clarity on, like, especially, because you moved some money, and so that'll be a major factor, because there's some,
Well, for example, transportation is a huge line, okay? When the default budget last year did not include the contractual increase for transportation, because at the time, we did not have a contract, okay? In my mind, that contractual obligation is in place, so even though our budget that we're building the default off of for this next year didn't have that contractual increase, we have to put that in the default. What cannot go in the default, though, is the contractual increase that is going to happen next year, because according to what the school board lawyer said, no, you can't put that in there.
so can I throw
In the sped
Yeah.
the sped, though, if there were some contractual increase there,
That
could, because that's mandated.
Right, by
So
federal law.
you get into odd, and then I think the other one we had was the health insurance question. But to me, I think that would be mandated.
I think that's
or-
mandated as well.
That's gonna change a little bit too with the position numbers, so that's a 6.5% GMR, that was the greatest maximum rate, so that's what we would budget for. I think to throw some transportation numbers at you, though, it went from like, the voted number was like 3.1 to 3.7 when you moved the money, it was like a $600,000 swing, to 3.9, which would be the next year, because it was about a $200,000 increase. So this is where Tom Geary had a hard time because of the directive. He's like, how am I supposed to, because he was working off the 3.1 number, how am I supposed to come in flat, you know, without the money that the school board moved in? So I just wanted some clarity, so we were all on the same page when we were pulling those numbers together, so, because those numbers could be greatly different from what the voted number was versus the school board really adopted budget, what you did to move the money to make it work, to make the bottom lines work, right?
But in general, you're going off the voted number for the default budget. Transportation is a little different because of when that contract came in
Yeah.
place, in my mind.
Yeah, if you remember, the number was decided in like December, and the contract, April-ish, like 3 or 4 months, whatever, or maybe it wasn't that late, but, so it was a little different there.
A little bit.
We have some flexibility, because obviously the number of positions and stuff with the health insurance, I'm not as worried about that. Those were the numbers I was really worried about, because those were like, again, with people coming in with the department budgets and them saying, I can't come in flat unless we go by the school board adjusted numbers, which everybody seems to be comfortable with, right?
Yeah,
We adjusted them.
right.
I know, but some people think it's the voted number, and not some people, but some people.
But the default budget has to be built off the voted number, and if it's changing, you have to provide the rationale for the change.
So the rationale for the change on transportation, you can state, right?
Yes.
That's a simple one. Contract was
Yeah.
awarded X on. Yeah.
Right, and it doesn't really matter that we're gonna, again, if the default passes as it has to be constructed off the voted budget, doesn't matter if we go back and do what we did again and change it after to make it work. But it has to be voted, it has to be based on the voted budget,
The voted
not
bottom line or the voted line item?
the voted line items. This is a
This
a
year's
big
line item,
change, and
yeah.
we've gotta, I think the motion the motion should be to the business administrator to start building the line-by-line default budget, showing rationales for any differences in the default budget from this year's final voted budget to next year's default. That's what has to happen,
Okay,
because
so get that down. That's the
Sorry.
motion I want, Kim.
the
Can
motion
you
is
see it?
to direct the superintendent to have a default budget constructed line by line based on last year's voted budget.
By,
Showing the differentials you want.
Next week? No, I don't.
by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, no, by 11, I mean, it's 11:15, can he do it in 2 weeks? I mean, or no,
Can he?
that's not 2 weeks.
That's a lot.
No, that's a long time. 11:1 it comes around pretty quickly.
I
But,
mean,
I know.
2 weeks?
11:15 is reasonable, or I mean, even the end of November, because the default budget doesn't.
No, I
need
wouldn't
to-
go
And
past
on top of this
11:15.
is that it doesn't have to all be done at once as a final
get it-
first
that's
pass.
what
I mean,
I-
if
that's what I was
there's gonna be a
saying.
lot of
Let's
items in
get
there
it
that we are
started.
going to,
Draft one. How about draft one
By
by,
the 15th.
is 11:15 good? I mean,
But-
11:01 would be kind of quick,
what
but
I'm trying to say is that you don't have to have draft one where, you know, the whole $70+ million is all done. You could have, you know, 2 or 3 lines that are deep ones, you know, that we could go into, that, okay, and we look at them, and then we could look at a couple else and build this on up over a couple of meetings, where we're not, spending a lot of time on the whole thing.
most of the numbers will be pretty simple. It's just a couple of big ones.
Yeah, there's a
concern I
couple of
have-
big
Patient
ones,
food,
the
yeah,
other ones
that's-
are,
yeah.
All right,
Pretty
so,
simple.
They are what they are.
Tim, will you make that part of your motion then, by 11:15, we would see a.
Draft one of the
Draft one, or wherever he's got at this point.
yes.
Does that make
yes,
reasonable
that's
sense to you?
reasonable.
Can we get a second?
What was the date?
On the agenda.
11:15,
I'll second that.
That was Kim's motion? Got it.
and Kim and Lee. Are we clear on what we're gonna ask them to do? We have to get started on this.
Well, in some sense, it's actually quite a bit easier this year, because all the one-time expenses are not in there this year. So I don't have to go through it line by line, because there
Yeah.
should be no
Should
one.
be less.
When you go default to default, it's pretty clean.
Yes, it should be very clean this year. The big ones are
Trans-
sped, because those changed by the contractuals.
Transportation.
The staffing is another big,
Yep. We have to remove those positions out of those lines, which will help with the health number to some
and I
degree. yeah.
still have not gotten the line-by-line salary detail.
Line-by-line salary detail. Oh, Jeff,
By position.
By position,
yeah.
which I know I sent to Sue exactly what we got
Yep,
last
and I
year.
sent it
And
out.
not the name, but by the position, right? Is it-
Oh, no, the names and the
Yeah.
She
positions
wants
are
the
in that.
position and the
Was the
name of
name?
the
Yeah.
person in the
Name of the
position.
position or name of the person?
No, the
Both.
name of the
Name of the
people
Both.
is in it. It shows the salary and everything.
Yeah, I sent that along to Jeff. All right, are we clear? We're a little off task, but you understand what we're gonna ask in the motion? Yep, all right. All in favor? 800.
Now, can I ask Brian a question? Did the budget committee give Jeff a date as to when they want all the numbers rolled into a first draft of the proposed budget?
I don't believe they did.
No.
I don't believe they did that.
'Cause it looks like they should be running right around the same time
Yeah.
now. So you might wanna,
I'm gonna check that.
because that's our Thursday meeting, so my guess is you're on the 22nd, well, maybe it's that Tuesday before Thanksgiving. They're gonna want it before the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I know that.
Yeah.
They're gonna
You only
probably,
have a
That's
couple
historically the way it's been.
yeah, I know, they're gonna
So
want
on
it,
the
Because I'm thinking they're falling behind the 8 ball.
yeah, they're
getting
gonna
tight.
want, yeah. Because I would figure our meeting on the 15th, they're probably gonna be looking for it on the 8th of November, I would imagine, right? Because they go the 8th and then they go right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I have one more thing, and then I'll open to anybody else. I want your permission to have Brian and I see Mr. O'Shaughnessy and get in writing, not verbally, not, oh, by the way, not an email, but written authority, so we understand what our responsibilities are and what our authority is to invoke the weighted vote, so that we can understand the formula and get it clarified. I've had quite a few questions from people today. I did not speak to the legal, to Mr. O'Shaughnessy for this. My assumption was the chair of the board, of SAU board would do that. So I would like your permission to be able to have Brian and I go or somehow correspond with Mr. O'Shaughnessy.
Well, I'd like to modify that a little bit, Sue, because much like last year when Kim and I, we actually spoke to O'Shaughnessy, then we actually got a second opinion.
Yeah.
I think something of this magnitude would be wise to get I'd like to hear what Jim says in writing, because what happened last night was not even, if you remember, when this first came up, you and I were sitting and Sarah, you were there, we were sitting in this lunchroom, and it was the day after an SA meeting a few weeks ago. And we were sitting there having lunch, and the subject came up, and Jim was sitting there on his phone reading it, and you said, it's just topic weighted voting, and,
I actually read the numbers to him.
yeah, and then he took his phone, he was reading it, and he says, oh, yeah, by majority of board members present. And then you said to him, read it again. That's not what that says. And then he read it again, and he says, oh, yeah, so majority of any board member, any board present, meaning Timberlane. So, and that was all, there was no really, we were just having lunch. There was no really big, it was just a general discussion. So, that's what threw me off last night. But, obviously, I understand when you're, no disrespect to Chris, when you're talking with lawyers, okay, it's their job to, on a conversation, to be as evasive as possible to help you, guide you along the lines. When they put something in writing, it will take on a little different clarification. So, I think would be wise to, besides Jim, to get another one. Because I know Jen's been talking to, but I don't think the New Hampshire School Board Association is going to give a legal opinion. They gave guidance.
They just give guidance. So what do you think about that?
I'd like to take it one step further. So what we saw last night was, even though it's in writing, there's different interpretations to what's written down. I'd like to have the attorney present at the meeting.
So you'd like which attorney? Ours?
O'Shaughnessy,
At a Timberlane meeting or an SAU meeting?
at an SAU meeting.
This board, you can only make the request of the SAU.
Correct.
But it sits fine, but I'm
Right.
just
I
saying.
agree, because I think it would be wonderful, all of us sitting here at the table, hearing. But I do agree also that you should have a second opinion.
An
So
independent
you agreed, an
opinion.
independent second opinion.
Because this is what is, Mr. O'Shaughnessy represents all three entities, Timberlane, Hampstead, and the SAU. I agree with Brian's sentiment is getting a third party, independent legal.
Second.
But I would also like to have the Timberlane Regional School Board do a request to the SAU chair, asking him to follow up on his verbiage that he brought forward at the meeting last night that said that Mr. O'Shaughnessy said this. And as he
I did
said,
send one.
put it in writing. And so we get the O'Shaughnessy opinion from the SAU, which is what Mr. Cipriano was saying that he said.
I think you're going to get that, though.
Well, I think,
I don't think you're going to get that either.
No, I'm saying I think you're going to get that when he has to give his, I think that's what's going to happen.
but not that Kristen's
I wanna
sitting here
know
as an
what we
attorney,
have to do.
but she's gonna tell you this, right? If the attorney represents Hampstead, the SAU, and Timberlane, and there's a conflict between any of those three, that's not the person that should be working on any of those three things, if there's a conflict, right?
Personally, I see it as a conflict all around that he shouldn't be representing all three
All
no matter
three.
what.
I agree.
There's a problem right there.
I have no
from-
interest in paying for an opinion from O'Shaughnessy and an opinion from some, we need our own lawyer.
I agree.
You want to get our own lawyer?
Correct.
Just for
Correct.
the Timberlane Board.
Yes?
I think the Timberlane Board
Yes.
needs an independent, not O'Shaughnessy, not from somebody from the School Board Association, an independent view of this and an understanding of what our role is in the SAU with regard to this concept.
What are our
So-
authorities there?
So I would make a motion to authorize the chair and vice chair to meet with an independent attorney to determine our role in the SAU.
Weighted average issue.
Weighted vote.
Yes.
Yeah, and not to go into great detail about this for the obvious reasons, you probably want to check with me because the other entities have already engaged other lawyers outside Drummond Woodson. So you may not have options, so.
Well,
Kim?
this brings me to my point, and I'm getting prepared to make a motion here.
Was there a second on Kristen's?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
motion?
there's already a
We gotta-
motion.
We have a
Hang
motion on
on.
the floor.
We got a motion on the floor here.
Is there a
We have a
second?
second on Kristen's idea?
I'll second it, but I want to amend it.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll second it, you can amend it.
All right, so you second.
All right, so Sean's
Keep it clean.
seconding,
Yeah.
and Lee,
I want to amend it to clarify that the second opinion attorney should not be associated with
Drummond Woodson.
Drummond
It
Woodson.
wouldn't be anyway.
They wouldn't,
Yeah,
yeah,
they
they
have
wouldn't,
to-
they wouldn't do that.
they would,
They have
They
to
wouldn't
step
take it.
away.
What you're gonna find out is it's getting harder and harder to get lawyers to do business here. It is. Believe it or not, as much as money is, it's getting very complicated you know, with 3 different entities, it's getting harder and harder to find people to do the work. You'd say, okay, why do we have John Woodson representing all 3? They're the best in the business, that's why. And they have a deep bench, special ed, personnel, and Jim happens to be very good, but it's hard, you're right, if he ends up representing people that have conflict with one another, and he'll step out, which is what they know they have to in some of these things. And I think this one is one that's a no-brainer that they have to step out, right? I mean, you got Hampstead, Timberlane, and the SAU.
I don't understand why O'Shaughnessy is now stepping out when he already gave the chair of the SAU a legal opinion, and now he's stepping out?
If there's conflict,
What's the
initially,
conflict?
he gives them, if whatever conversation they had, and I wasn't there, whatever conversation they had, and then conflict arises, and that's when they walk away. If there's no conflict, hey, here's my opinion, you're the SAU chair, this is what you tell the SAU, and then the SAU doesn't like it, because 7 people feel one way and 7 other people feel a different way. Yeah.
There was no written.
There's no.
No, I know,
was-
I know.
He
No, I-
said, he said.
But it was conflicting opinions of what he said
it
to
wasn't
different
written.
people.
Which if I was giving him advice and 2 people in the room are both saying that the same lawyer said different things, that's not good for anybody.
Nope.
No.
It's not good for the organization, it's not good for the person that they represent, the lawyer that's representing you. It's bad business, it's just messy, messy, you know?
What's disturbing to me is that I'm hearing from the superintendent that the SAU is seeking alternative legal counsel, and I'm sitting here as the vice chair of the SAU, which means I'm representing Timberlane, and I know nothing about this, just letting the rest of the board know.
Well, neither does the rest of the board, apparently,
Yeah,
so either
nobody
so.
Well, I, as the vice
Good
chair,
point,
though,
Kim.
should certainly be the one to know it, because isn't this part of the collegiality that we were speaking about yesterday, or the
Yes.
lack thereof?
That's why this motion is encompassing both the chair and the vice chair in this motion. It's pretty clear that we want both of them to be the ones that are contacting that. Or, to speak to your point, I totally agree. You were left on the bench.
I want it in writing, and I want to be able to say, did you hear that, Brian? Did I hear that? Yes, no.
I don't want you to be misled, it's not about this issue. It's somebody, it's a firm that would not be able to represent the SAU, it's not about this issue. So,
So, I'm very confused then.
I know, and I can't go, I'm not gonna go into detail here, it's
So
SAU
does-
thing.
Well, I'm sure we have a
Put a
few
motion on the
names
floor.
and we call around and they're gonna tell you if there's a conflict.
Right.
All
course they
attorneys
are.
have a conflict check like that, they're gonna
course they
tell
are.
you if they can or
Okay.
can't.
Okay.
End of story, so.
All right, Can we vote on this emotion, in a collegial way? Can we vote this motion? Are we ready to vote this motion? Okay, all in favor? 8-0-0, thank you very much. Our target will be November 1st, something, if we have something earlier, we'll get it to you.
Well, that's your neck, what is,
Next
This
meeting is
brings up
November
some
1st.
interesting stuff. If we're not gonna get this to November 1st.
I'm not saying, I mean, I
Well,
want to,
just hear me out for a second. We have, right now, and I know this is SAU business, but it's logistics-wise, is an issue for everybody, is we have the public hearing set for November
14th?
14th.
Yeah.
And there's no budget that's actually being able to be present, which then that has to be posted well before the public hearing, so you start backing off of dates, getting legal opinions. I mean, there might be a window of 2 or 3 days that we could have a meeting.
so I
So-
wrote personally and copied Brian, and I thought I copied Kim on it as well, and asked specifically for a meeting. We're gonna need to have a meeting with Mr. Cipriano to address that budget, and weighted vote, if that could be settled, that'd be great, but we have to address that budget. We didn't discuss that budget, and if we're gonna keep this date. If not, we gotta make some changes here. Not just gonna not.
That date, to me personally, is just a nice to-have date. I mean, we don't have to have the SAU budget up until we, when all the other budgets have to be presented, in a public hearing. So we have
sure.
a couple of months, almost, to play with
Right.
that. But
So
it has
I
to,
would
right now, it's
recommend-
being publicly posted that that's the date for it, so that needs to be addressed probably immediately, would be my recommendation.
Was that
to
publicly
Mr.
posted?
Cipriano.
Also, it's publicly posted, I think, on like our legal calendar.
To hold the date. No, I don't know.
No, actually, there's no legal notice that's gone out. We might have it on our district calendar.
Okay, well,
Actually,
then, I
we
mean,
wouldn't,
just.
because that's the Timberlane, not the
make sure of
SAU
that.
calendar.
So
We
I
have it on our
recommend we
agendas.
email the chair,
I,
ask for a meeting.
but I don't know, I'm sure
Really
so you and
not
I
been
can get with lawyers
successful
next week.
ever in the past.
Yeah,
keep
that's
trying.
another issue.
In my whole
Don't give up,
experience.
girlfriend, keep trying.
What's that?
No,
I don't, I'm sure we can get the Floyd firm next week.
Okay,
It's gotta be a priority.
yeah, I mean, you know, trying to give us a little window here.
Yeah, but Sean, I agree with Sean.
Yeah,
That's a date that was set up that it's
The
well in
14th.
advance of
Yeah.
an RSA deadline, you know.
And the hearing is
revenue
usually a
deadline.
half hour, you know, open the hearing, questions from the floor, and you move on. So you could make the hearing at the end of the meeting after we discuss the budget, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the matter, Mrs. Wells? You all right?
We got a fly over here, and Lee wants me to kill it, and I had nothing to kill it with.
Driving me crazy. It's been circling
These
all
are
over.
serious issues on that side of the
You
room.
want to know the truth? That was the truth.
It was there last night too, kind of going,
A work fly?
Yeah, really.
Goodness.
All right, anything else? Yes, Dr. Farr.
I'm gonna make a motion to remove you as the chair, Sue.
What?
Well, discussion?
Second.
Discussion?
Who seconded that?
You don't have to entertain that.
I don't want to entertain that. Why? Why would you do that? I guess, but I would prefer if you get it on the agenda, I guess.
It
We
doesn't
don't
mean-
have anything in Robert's Rules of Order to remove me.
There's no policy on removal.
That's
which
correct.
doesn't mean that it can be done. If you want to object,
I
as
object.
Mr. Cipriano did, according to our policy, any ruling of the chair may be challenged on any subject by a 2/3 vote of all board members present and voting, provided that a quorum is present at the time.
Okay, you have a motion on the floor. Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Okay, there's some discussion, yeah.
There's absolutely nothing in Robert's rules that allows for this. There's nothing in our policy that allows for this. This should be something, if you want to have a change in leadership, then you should do it respectfully and ask for it to be on it as an agenda item, to be able to create a list of grievances so that it can be discussed and debated and people can make a vote based on facts and not emotions. I am strongly opposed to this. To change leadership at this point in our juncture of where we are in the system, in our year, is going to be extremely disruptive. We made some great headway tonight planning the default, planning how to address difficulties we had last night at the SAU meeting. We are moving forward, and to do this now is just so disruptive. We have a request to do I'm sorry, this just frustrates me because I really felt that we were moving forward tonight. We had a very good, effective meeting, and a change in leadership at this point, I truly believe is just gonna be too disruptive to the overall board and effectiveness of the board and the goodwill. We are moving forward. I just was really hoping we could continue on that path.
In my own defense, I've worked and listened to every single one of you. I've taken emails from every single one of you. I've taken phone calls. I have given you my personal email, my personal cell phone, and I have worked really hard to try and listen respectfully to your points of view as I have expected you to listen to my point of view. I thought we were making great headway. This is a great, strong group of people, fiscally responsible, fiscally conservative, concerned about curriculum, concerned about facilities. I don't know what I would have done that would give you lack of confidence that I could keep us going in a forward way. So for me, it feels personal. It's obviously personal.
Well,
No one has ever approached me on saying, I don't like the color of your nail polish, or I don't like what you said the other night. And if you have, I've tried, and when people have brought that up, I've tried to be more respectful. Mr. O'Neill thought I'm sarcastic, and I have tried really, really hard to be less sarcastic. You've asked me to kind of ask the superintendent not to be so boisterous. I worked really, really hard to get him to be a listener and a contributor without being angry.
Angry.
I'd like to give you the rationale for this, and it speaks to what occurred last night at the SAU board. We had the majority of the board that wanted to move towards weighted voting, which for our board, who pays 77% of that SAU bill, and does not get the representation that we deserve on that board, that you did not vote with your board. And that I can't get past that right now. I don't understand.
I try to explain why I did. I don't feel it's a very good thing to do. You make fun of me and say I'm trying to be congenial, but I try to be collegial, and you kind of made fun of me about that. Okay. However, with this side of the table saying one thing and that side of the table saying another, it wasn't clear to me that anybody had the authority. I voted no because I just didn't feel it was a good idea to do last night.
So
That's why I voted no. I explained that.
you are the leader of our board, and we were at a meeting where we had essentially one written opinion and one verbal opinion.
I never saw any written opinion. Where was the written opinion?
Jen was reading from the email that she received from the New Hampshire School Board
I
Association.
never saw it. She didn't share it. So
Well,
other
she
than
said she was reading
Okay.
from it. But regardless, even with two
so
verbal
because
opinions.
I voted no, you don't think I can lead this group forward in a positive way?
You voted no to the majority of the board, and in essence told our constituents that you didn't think that we deserved
That's
the
not true.
correct. Oh, yes.
That's not
You're not.
true,
You're not.
Kim.
You don't think. What is the issue with weighted voting for our board? I don't understand this from
What's the
you as
formula?
the leader.
How do we do it? When do we invoke it? Those were the questions no one had answered because nothing was written down.
Okay, can I take a stab at this now? I guess I had a couple of conversations with Sue today, and I'm in a little point of confusion myself here. I guess, Sarah, everyone in this room is obviously entitled to their own opinion. So I agree with Kim in the fact that the leader should be following the will and the bulk of the board. So I guess, Sue, you and I get through this, and we go meet with the lawyers, and they tell you how this works.
Mm-hmm.
If this works like we believe it works, like
Like you believe from your conversation, yeah.
well, in reading the RSA, if all of a sudden the majority, so a minimum of 5 members of the Timberlane board, I guess legally, technically speaking, you're supposed to demand the vote versus motion it.
Yeah,
There's a
demand the vote.
okay, and that occurs. Are you with the board on that?
Yes. Once it gets clarified.
Which is obviously because obviously people at home, because most people at home don't even know what happened anyway, because even though it wasn't
broadcast.
televised, whatever, it's recorded, whatever. So
I believe we have the right to have a weighted vote. I just want to know the formula. I want to see it in writing. I want to know when we can invoke it. What would be the reasons for invoking it? Not to go over the minutes.
again, it's now you get down to the nitty gritty. To me, I want, as I said to you on the phone earlier today. Yes, we are 77% of the budget. We are the largest part of this thing.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, Timberlane, just by mathematically, should always be the lead. I mean, I think you've been beyond. I think before people in this room even served, before the superintendent even worked here, that I think they've been overboard. That it seems to be this little, well, we ran it this year, you ran it last year. Guys, Timberlane should be running it 99% of the time. We're 77% of this. It's really Timberlane, and that's really what goes on. That, truth be told, that's why we're 77% of the budget. And we can go back and forth on that, but I'm just talking reality here. Now, I get it that elections, well, Barack Obama's famous line, elections have consequences, if you will. I was a chair, different people come in, people change the chair. You have new board members. Last night, you saw 7 board members saying, listen, the Timberlane School Board wants things to go this way. Of course, you had the right to do the vote you did. But I agree with Kim that I was just kind of sitting back going, why would she go against her own board? Now, me personally, I guess I'm looking for some, I work fine with you. So I'm looking for some kind of commitment here to say, what the lawyers say, you can do this, you do it.
Yeah.
And because if there's, I guess, I don't know, there was something.
I didn't vote for last night
Well-
for the same reasons that Sue didn't.
well,
There was
but-
no consensus, there was no clear
We-
understanding of the process, and I didn't feel comfortable voting for something that wasn't fully understood. There was an understanding on one side and understanding on the other. It was literally the same thing.
But here's 8 or 9 of us. There's only one board member missing here. So as you nicely emotionally put, Sarah, they go, you want people to hear this out and have some rationale. So here's 8 or 9 of us saying, okay, there's no little texting, where you going with this thing? So to me, what's important to me is Timberlane is the lead. This is not a 50-50 thing. No matter how you want to look at this thing, the state, I've had these several conversations with the superintendent. I've never understood since I've been on this board, and I've been pretty active in Atkinson politics for years. I never heard of the SAU until I became a school board member. And I never could quite wrap my head around it that my town, when you go to those meetings, gets 2 votes, and the town of Hampstead gets 5 votes. I understand how it went through with the whole RSA, and I couldn't understand how the state would let that happen. Now we find out, well, I find out over the last couple of weeks, there's this thing called weighted voting. So when you do weighted voting, it's based on student population. It gets it right down to as equitable as possible. So I can't even begin to imagine why anybody who's serving on this board would be against that equitable vote. If you fully understood it versus.
I fully understood it. It was the process and the procedure that was obviously very unclear. There was a lot of contention between the 2 boards and a lot of disagreement as to the numbers, when it's voted, when the process of when you take the vote and utilize it. Do you make a motion and then do a point of order to invoke weighted voting and then take a vote for the weighted voting? Like, nobody knew. So how can I vote in favor of something to implement something when there was no consensus on how to utilize it? It's a tool that nobody understood. It hasn't been used in 30 years. So I voted against it because I wanted to better understand it.
It hasn't been used
Here, sorry.
as far as I know.
Well,
That was my reasoning.
I just
we
want
have
to
the
know
right
where we
to
are
It's not that
before
I'm
we vote.
against it, I just want to understand it better.
That's
that
why I
we're-
want to see a lawyer.
Yeah,
I want to
exactly.
understand it, so then I can then say, okay, now I get what you're gonna do, what we're gonna do here.
Absolutely.
That was my reason for voting no last night. I was very upset that there were 2 sides.
Yeah.
And nobody had it really in writing, and I appreciate that Jen Silva had an email, didn't know that, from the New Hampshire school boards, but I would prefer it be, I wanted it to be from the lawyer that represents the SAU.
Who's no better than Jason saying he talked to the lawyer? He had nothing in writing either.
I agree. I agree with you,
no, that's-
Sheila. It should have been in writing.
Yeah.
And Sean said it 10 times on the phone, and I agreed 10 times. Lee?
I'm very conflicted on the motion. I was disappointed in the vote last night. I understand your rationale. My personal perspective is when we're at the SAU board table for an SAU meeting, we're conducting the business of the SAU, of which Timberlane is a member, of which Sandown is a member. So when I am at that board table, I'm looking out for the best interests of Sandown and ultimately Timberlane. So the vote disappointed me. And as I said, I'm conflicted, so I'm looking for assurances that when we're at that board table, we're working together as a team, looking out for the best interest of Timberlane.
Timberlane.
Because ultimately, that's who we're representing at the SAU level.
We're representing the business end of Timberlane, in my opinion.
Which pays the majority.
77% of the bill.
So, I honestly do, I have issues with that also.
Okay, all I can tell you is once I hear from the lawyer, if I'm allowed to hear from the lawyer, and get it in writing, then I'm ready to revote if we ever get a chance to revote.
Well,
And
you'll
I
get
would
a chance to
support the
revote.
bill. And then I would support what I feel is right for Timberlane. We have the authority to invoke it, let's invoke it. Kim?
Just a couple things. You know, I appreciate that you have been working diligently and very cooperatively with the board here in the last month or two. To say that you've always answered emails, that you've always been collegial in a sense. I know how many emails I sent to you before there was a disruption in the personnel or changeover in this board that I never even received a response to. You know, which we can't discuss here, that there are still ongoing issues with regards to me in this board and what's transpired for the last several months. So I just want to put that out there. Also, Jen Silva has contacted the New Hampshire School Board Association again. And if this motion passes, or, I mean, the motion that's passed on the seeing the lawyers, there is a list of questions that need to go to our council regarding this, that she has. So I just want to make sure on that. The other issue I have, and is, in terms of your leadership, is the signing of 3-year contracts for administrators. I do not understand how you as the chair could sign 3-year contracts for administrators and not let this board know.
I thought that Dr. Metzler had negotiated those contracts, and I signed contracts of 700 and some odd. I did sign those. He did discuss the idea with me. I thought it had some merit, and frankly, that's where it ended, for me.
But I guess my issue with that is, you as the chair don't have the authority to make the decision for the board that we're not gonna enter into 3-year contracts for certain personnel. That is,
But I don't negotiate the contract either. It's the authority of the superintendent to negotiate with his administrators.
But by you signing that, Sue, you're actually corroborating that effort.
So everyone I signed, including the teachers, I didn't have the authority to let them have a contract, or let them have a salary, or let them have a,
Teachers are 1 year.
teachers are all on 1-year contracts.
so it's the multi-year.
It's the multi-year contracts. I don't understand why you as the chair would enter into multi-year contracts when technically you're not supposed to bind another board by a multi-year contract. And the issue we now have with multi-year contracts is in the default budgets,
Right.
you cannot put those increases. So those people, if the default budget pass, will not get an increase.
That's right.
Well, I think that's,
I thought I had the authority to sign those contracts, just like I had the authority to sign the teacher contracts.
okay. I think what should have happened, like the superintendent usually brings the nomination list, the board votes on the teacher contract, the vote on, then you execute, then you sign them, but the board votes on them. What happened on these I believe there was some administrative contracts, whether 20, 30, whatever it was, the board, it didn't come back to the board that say, okay, this is a multi-year contract. And the board should be executing, saying, that then you do the formal signature, but usually the chair will execute the will of the board. And to me, that's what, that was the missing link, that whenever that happened there last spring.
July.
Okay, July, I'm sorry. So that was a concern of mine that I agree with Kim on. My bigger concern clearly was what happened last night, and to me, if I don't know, again, as far as I'm concerned, Kim, if you can, I look at this thing, I think, you look at, this board, in my opinion, should not even meet with the SAU board until we have a clarification on how this goes down, because this affects everything. So I don't want to get involved with the SAU board and on minor stuff when this is hanging over our head. My suggestion is, well, it's up to you, but if you give it another bite at the apple, see if that's the main focus, I don't know what you're. I believe me, I agree with Kim, and and I've sat in this position. It's not an easy position to sit in, and I think, quite honestly, I think it's even harder for you, Sue, in the fact that you've had to work harder, because when you're dealing with just the mindset of people like myself, or I'm more conservative person, so it's different. New territory for you, which from that standpoint, God love you, what you've done. So, but this other thing, me personally, I'm looking for some kind of commitment here, which, and that's.
All I can tell you is, once I hear from the lawyer, if you're talking about the weighted vote.
That's a pretty, for the Timberlane School District, that's about as big as it gets. I don't see any issue in front of this board bigger than that.
So then we're gonna revote anyway, correct? We would demand the vote again.
You demand the vote again, but even Jason, again, we'll see what the legal big will say, but Jason, the way he's fine. He knows he does a good job conducting a meeting, but the way he did that, and that's why I was uncomfortable making that vote last night, because my understanding of the vote is I wanted to vote yes for weighted voting to be part of the Timberlane vote. I ended up voting yes for something that does not follow, from what I understand, the RSAs.
Because he had us vote on whether.
So that went 7-7, and the issue died. So if that was 8-6, then that would have survived, even though that's not properly how the weighted voting thing is supposed to work.
Well, our 7 votes should have allowed for the weighted voting. That's what it was. Our majority should allow for the weighted voting.
That wasn't the motion he allowed, Kim.
Yeah.
Remember, he.
I know. And the idea that we left because we didn't get our way, no, we left because the RSA was not being followed.
That's
And I
that's
stayed
that's
to
why I
represent the board to make sure nothing else happened.
Well-
Sean was still on the phone. I wasn't sure he was still on the phone. He asked who was in the room. You guys had left. He said, "Who's in the room?" Jason said it. He said, "I'm hanging up." I was packing up as I knew Sean was gonna hang up. So was Sarah. We were on our way, even before Jason said adjourned.
Can we also make very clear with the lawyer too, on the ADM and the numbers that are supposed to be used?
Well, I think everything should.
Numbers reported at the.
Sure, that's gotta be one of the
DOE.
questions, right?
Yeah.
This is, but, so to me.
All of it,
Which
I've already-
students and which schools?
all of it,
Yes, there are several questions,
Yep.
many questions.
many
that-
questions.
I've already talked to Jen about some, there are several, there weren't.
The rest of us haven't talked to Jen.
No,
How is that
I know.
fair to Sarah or myself?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, maybe Lee hasn't either.
Yeah.
But
No,
we
I
didn't
know.
have a conversation with Jen about those specific questions.
No, I haven't
It
either.
needs to
I'm
come
just
to the
sa-
lawyer.
Oh,
She
absolutely.
needs to give the questions to who's ever gonna go see the lawyer. I'm just
She
saying, 'cause
does, and
she's
we all
not
do.
here. She didn't talk to everybody.
But that's no different
Right.
than Jason calling the lawyer and Kim not
Right.
having a clue either.
Right, I'm not saying it
I'm not arguing it is different.
But I agree.
Should have been in writing.
But all of these things need to go and find out exactly what it is. All of the questions, not just how the weighted voting went, all of it.
I got you.
So, you've committed numerous times to go forward and support the weighted voting.
Yes.
If the lawyer, after, everything's explained, all of the questions are presented and answers and everything.
Yes.
With that commitment, are you willing to remove the motion? She's been very clear and you guys have asked her repeatedly for that clarification. She's confirmed repeatedly that she would support the board should weighted voting become, be requested to be invoked at the next SAU meeting. Since that's your primary grievance, and she's reaffirmed numerous times that, and explained why she voted the way she did last night, due to the ambiguity of the vote and the decision. Would you consider at this point removing your motion from the table?
That's one grievance. The 3-year contract is another issue. And I know.
You can't change that. I mean, it's unfortunate, and I agree. Hearing about it is surprising, but we can change this. We can change what the trajectory of what happened last night. Unfortunately we can't change. She admitted, she recognized she made a mistake. People make mistakes. This we can change. We can change the trajectory of this. She's given you the commitment. So I'm asking if you would consider at this point removing the motion from the table.
I will consider it, but I do want to add here, and this is, and please, I understand this is very personal, but try not to take this personally, because I've already had this discussion, is that since I've been on this board, regardless of whether Sue's chair, Brian's chair, Jason Cipriano's chair, these chairs of these boards are acting in a manner that is not consistent with what the authority is given to the chair. You cannot make decisions for the board. If a board asks for a special meeting should occur. If the board...
And you don't think I didn't try to have that happen, Kim? Again, in my own defense, I worked weeks to try and get a time, a place, the staffing during summer months. I don't know.
We were willing to have meetings without the staffing. So anyway, this is not, what has to happen is the board, the chair needs to communicate to the board, whether you like the board member, don't like the board member.
It's nothing to do with that.
It has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with it, but there has to be that communication, and there has to be, the chair should be communicating everything down to the board members. What we shouldn't see is Jason's, a chair saying, "Oh, I went out and got a legal opinion," and no one else knows. No one else knows about it. Who gave the chair the authority to go get the legal opinion? Last year, for instance, if you're going to go get a legal opinion as the chair, the board should be informed. There was only one legal opinion we got last year, and we gave Brian the authority to seek that legal opinion.
Didn't I start this conversation an hour ago asking, please, can you give Brian and I permission to please go and seek legal so we can get this straightened out and move forward?
On this particular issue, but there's obviously been other legal sorts of conversations and things that were not brought to this board.
We have a request out for a retreat, for a board retreat. Mm-hmm. To me, this seems like it's a very important issue. It's not something that's necessarily going to get solved right here, but in a board retreat, it could be the topic of discussion where we're addressing it and we're working through it productively when, again, we don't have such a huge action item on the table that is going to impact the board as a whole in such a huge way at this stage in the game. I understand, and I agree with you. The communication is huge across the board, but I feel, and that grievance is obviously it's valid. And I feel like it can be discussed during the board retreat so that we're, again, all on the same page and we're able to move forward and continue in a positive direction. So with that consideration, if it's put on, if we're able to nail down a date for a retreat and we put this topic, communication and board chair roles and responsibilities and expectations, can we remove this motion from the table and move forward?
Well, listen, the retreat, that's a great, listen, again, you're gonna get another bite at this apple, definitely in less than 5 to 10 days. The next time this board meets with the SAU board, it's either gonna either we have this, which I know we have this right. I know, well, I didn't write the RSA. Of course there's an RSA. For some reason, there was some confusion last night. Hopefully we get this all clarified after we meet with an independent counsel. But you're gonna see real fast that night what's gonna happen, and you're not gonna have to wait 30 days.
Only with your permission. And I won't be insulted if you don't want to hear from me on this, but I don't want to not speak in support if appropriate, if it's okay. Well, I have to say, and I'll say, all the boards are different, right? Each board's different. You get different people, and it works differently. And I've talked to you privately, several of you, about when the board's split, when it's 5-4, 4-5, you have some synergy you're doing, and people say, oh, you're acting different now because the board's different. And I was insulted by that because, no, I work for the board. When the board's all on the same page, it makes it very easy. When it's 5-4, 4-5, it's not so easy. I can tell you, Sue asked me to do things I don't like, I may not want to do them. I do them. She asked me very nicely. She's a wonderful woman. She's class act, and it's not easy all the time. And I've worked for like 50 different people. And Sean, you know this. You lost it when you didn't win that budget seat. Who was the first person I called? I said, Sean, can I still call you for budget advice? And you said absolutely, right? So it really wasn't about who wins and loses. It's like I felt, and I said to you before, you've changed the decorum of this board in many ways, and so that has had an impact on how we. I can't speak for everybody else. Has an impact on how I interact here, right? Doesn't have anything to do with new Pete. It's different. Sport's different. We get comfortable, and I think some of those old practices, good, bad, or indifferent, just like the superintendent, the budget, and the CFO just do the budget because the school board doesn't want to do it. Well, this school board does, right? And then people get comfortable, and they think that's the way it is, and they don't know why it's that way, and then it changes. So I think some things have changed, and that's why I suggested the retreat. And the irony here is the retreat's usually for a split board that you're trying to get on the same page. This board's not really all that split. It's pretty clear. It makes my job a lot easier. Has nothing to do with anything other than that. And I asked you, are you going to give me a shot to work with this board? And you said absolutely. Yeah. And so we're doing it. I don't know. I don't leave here feeling the same way. I leave here feeling like, oh, we're getting stuff done. It's not contentious. We're not all. And that does speak to leadership, right? And like I said, I didn't want to miss the opportunity. I mean, it does speak to leadership. And who was the first person when the chair opened? Of all the people, I said, Brian, be great, right? Of all the people, I'm asking for Brian. History. We had we worked well last year. That's made it very easy. But I think you guys are in great shape. I think you're getting some good work done. I think we're on the same page. The budget committee and the school board are working together. I don't know. It just feels pretty good. I'm with whoever. I think it was Sarah. I don't know. That disruption. It may or may not. But it just seems like it's not necessary at this point. And Brian's point is, we'll get some clarity. We'll get that straightened out. We need an SAU budget. I was worried about getting the goals kind of thing. You took care of that. I'm sure Hampstead will take care of that. And then be a little sensitive because I've been accused of many, many, many things, right? I got accused of just being so pro-Timberlane that I didn't care about Hampstead. That was just a couple of years ago. I had people, right? And then he only cares about Hampstead because he lives there. He doesn't care about Timberlane. That's not true. Obviously this is our work in 2 districts. Work for like 50 different people. Your personalities are all different. The boards are different. But this just feels like we're doing, I don't know, it just feels a lot better than it has.
But it's worth, I appreciate it's worth beating a dead horse. That was a 2x4 in the face last night. So I will give my fellow board members the respect of not clearly understanding that vote, how you voted on it and this kind of stuff. But once you get clarification,
No, but can I
this
just,
is Timberlane.
to your point,
The Timberlane board should
Yep.
stay.
and I'm not gonna say if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't feel any different. I would say the only other reason that we're not really acknowledging, I get, that Timberlane wants to take we want our authority. It's just divisive when we do it. Like, that's the, and that's fine. You get, we need to be represented a certain way, and they're represented a certain way. But it's not about us anymore, it's about us and them. It's not, I said it last night, hey, listen, if Timberlane needs, and that's what Timberlane wants, then Timberlane does it. But that also comes with a cost too. But it may or may not matter, because it's like, we want what we want, and we don't care how they feel, that's fine.
It's the only fair and equitable vote. I mean, if I'm in Hampstead, and it's how their life has been for 5 or 10 years, I'm not gonna look at it that way, but when you start doing a vote by documents we just saw, actual student, that's real numbers.
Well, let me ask you this, should the town in the Timberlane Regional School District with the most kids have the most representatives on this board?
Currently, from the numbers that we have right now, it's totally backwards. Plastow has 3 and Sandown has 2.
Sandown should have one more.
I'm just asking the question, like I said, and so I thought
As
about.
long as you want to take over the fire, the police, the emergency.
Well, I'm just saying, by the numbers, that's what it would be.
And I
Another
thought
conversation.
for a long time, right, if we were worried about the votes, as opposed to throwing the weighted voting, and this is an Articles of Agreement thing, I was like, well, maybe Plastow should have 5, and Sandow should have 4, and, the other 2, you get to 13, 15 votes. I always found it odd that we have 2 odd-numbered boards, and we think somehow by adding 2 odd numbers, we weren't gonna get an even number.
Never should have been an even.
So we have an even number at the SAU, which is a weird thing too, but, anyway, I appreciate what you're saying, I get it, believe me, I understand how you feel, I understand how they feel, and we're just trying to move forward, I say we, and I just think that this particular board, I'll forget about SAU for now, this particular board, I feel is really working well together, and you got a good team, and I think they represent a lot, from education to, and in terms of who's too busy, who has day jobs, and these people are available. I know you put a ton of time in last year, and you all do, but, I mean, they're here like that. I mean, it's like any time of the day, Brian shows up. I don't know, it's a good team, so.
I can commit Kim to communicating everything I know once a day, but I'm not gonna sit on my.
Well, and everybody,
all day long.
and everybody wants it differently, right? So I'm trying to reach out to you, and then I'm calling people from, I'm back to calling 14 different people on
Oh,
things.
you should not be doing that. You shouldn't be.
doing
But sometimes it's real-time stuff, and so it's hard for me to write something that I don't want, maybe it might change a little bit by the end of the day. In our example today, when I had to share something with Lee, that was a Sandown thing, and I think yeah. So that was something they needed to know, and I shared it with, and you got something late today that wasn't nearly as detailed as what I had to share with them, because they needed to know a little more. You're in the store or whatever, but I don't mind, I managed it that way, and then we got to the only through the chair, and then all of a sudden, people, aren't getting what they, and even Brian, you remember last year, I was like, well, Brian, I told you, didn't you? And, it doesn't always get to everybody as quickly, right? Because it may be not, so now I'm just trying to say, all right, if it's town-specific, all right, it's about Stagecoach, all right, Sheila and Lee need to know, and the chair and the vice chair need to know. We got that one done pretty quickly. But it's not always, it's not an exact science
Not an
sometimes.
easy balance.
It's not an easy balance, but to me, I'll tell you the truth, and, I mean, I have a special relationship with my vice chair last year, and I will tell you this. Me personally, I am willing to take one more bite at the apple with the SAU, then that's it. That's how we look at it, Kim. To me, because that's gonna happen in less than 2 weeks.
We're gonna get the clarification,
And-
demand the vote,
'cause
take the vote.
whatever was being considered.
I'm not interested in meeting with the SAU board until we have something in writing
Yeah, no, that was clear.
that our
Clear.
lawyer is gonna
Correct.
look at.
Or
Absolutely,
this independent lawyer.
and absolutely,
The
and that,
independent lawyer's
and
gonna
that,
look
and
at.
that
I don't want it
vote,
sprung on me at the SAU. I wanna see
No.
it in advance.
Yeah. Yeah,
Correct.
absolutely.
I'm inclined to
Correct.
go along with
And-
Brian.
Absolutely.
And when that goes in, and then that's it, you get the replay of and that's it. We don't have to wait 6, 8, 12 weeks. This is gonna happen sooner than you think. That's how I look at it.
Well, can I just, the last piece, and so the frustrating piece of making all those calls, there are obviously some benefits, right? So you thanked me today for something, and I go, that was Kim's advice, right? So I'm talking to you about something else, and you said, and that was, bring the SAU budget in level, because the other budget's all right, nobody directed me to do it, but, all right. So we went back and did a draft 2 and leveled it, and that was on your advice. But he was thanking me, and I said, no, that was Kim's advice. So, and that came off a different discussion. And you would say, hey, Einstein, you should have figured that out on your own, but it doesn't always work that way, right? I mean, it's like, everybody feels differently. Some people want this, and some people want that, and so it's, you know, so I'm okay with it. That's why I give my cell phone number out, you know, people can call, I call, we do it, I got a work number, I got, you know, we do a number of things, so. Anyway, I went on much longer, I just didn't want to pass on, I felt like, you know, it's a good team.
I will withdraw my motion. Sue, I don't, I don't think I'm gonna apologize. I think the reason I made the motion was to have this discussion. Because it was important that I think that you knew how, at least I felt, and probably the others that left the meeting last night felt. And I appreciate your hard work as the chair. I appreciate that as the board composition has changed, that you've changed along with it. I'll be honest, I didn't appreciate that beforehand, but I'm willing to move forward, and I've told the same thing to the superintendent, so I will withdraw my motion.
I'll withdraw my second.
Thank you, Cheryl.
The other issue that I'd like to bring on up is that it should be agnostic of how the board is. You should be a certain character, and it's agnostic of the board of your positions. And it has been very clear that this board has changed in the last couple of years. And the change in demeanor, I mean, there's been issues that, yes, you've been sitting over there, Sue, rolling eyes at Kim for asking a question.
Did I roll my eyes tonight?
I didn't say tonight, but in the past.
And you asked
This
me
is
to
a
stop, and I
character
stopped.
change that has happened because this body here has changed.
It's changed in the last 2 weeks.
It has-
So you have to work with the people that are here. And I understand this group of people. And again, I'll say, this is a very strong group of people with strong opinions, fiscally very conservative. We're gonna work together and get the very best we can for our kids.
But just because we have conflict should not be that we take it personally.
No, I think it changed last spring. I really do. In April, even though the numbers may have been different, but like I said, the decorum changed, and I said that to you. That was a while ago. That wasn't just recent. That wasn't just 2 weeks ago. That was months ago. I mean, the meetings changed. They got better, right?
Is there any chance we can move transportation up? Sorry, but, this has been bugging me. We've got this on.
So Jen.
No, it was
Jen
supposed to be
asked-
tonight. Oh,
Yeah, it
sorry.
was gonna be tonight, but because Jen,
Right.
again, listening to my board members, Jen could not be here tonight, she's at a soccer game, and asked, could I push it off? So I asked, could we do it November 1st? That was fine with Jen, but Sandy would not be able to be with us November 1st, so the next possible date is the 15th of November.
I
Jen said,
had her for tonight, and then she got bumped, and she had plans on the 1st.
so she's got plans on the 1st. That's the only reason I did that. If you want to have a discussion without the transportation director here,
Well, I think we could probably have part of the discussion without the transportation director here, because it's contractual, is what I'm looking for.
and I don't think that's necessarily, everybody's on the boards isn't necessarily the contract, but if you want
No,
to
it just,
put it-
I just got specific questions.
some reasonable questions, and who would we have here answer them? Tom?
You
Probably.
should have Tom and Sandy, though.
I
because-
wanted to have both of them here.
Because some of them may be route driver-specific questions that relate to the contract. I don't know what I don't know what your questions are. No.
So,
So why not have Tom here so she can ask her questions, and if they can't be answered, they can be brought forth to Sandy, so when she does come in, she has the answers and
Sure,
we're
we
not
can do that.
playing
It's
the
just simple.
catch-up game.
we can do that.
Well, we've done this too in the past, right? So sometimes, if you submit the questions, we can get you answers,
Yeah.
right? Instead of, it depends, if it has to be a public thing,
Right.
which they can be a public thing, but if it's just,
They're easy questions, it's not really tough stuff. There was one more thing that I wanted, oh, that's what it was. Service contract inventory.
Service
What are we
contract.
doing on that? Are we coming up on that?
Tom's working on that.
Good.
Tom's working on that.
we've
and-
we'll do something similar we did with the organizational chart, right? So we'll send it out and then we'll have a button.
Well, all I'm looking for is the company
Oh, I know.
and how long.
But I
we are.
said, when we get it out, when we have it to you, then
Oh,
we'll
yeah,
do
yeah,
something
yeah.
similar where we post it and
Yeah.
send it to you and then post it or whatever.
Thank you for the organizational chart, that was
Yes,
fantastic.
and you got, I thought there'd be another copy in the packet, so I did
Oh, I
get, you
yeah,
copied it
I
off, I
printed
did,
and
yeah.
taped it.
And there was one correction that I insisted was made, and I believe it was added, so.
No, that was perfect, because I have the idea now. Now I
Okay.
know exactly what's going on. Well, it's hard.
I get you.
It's hard getting all those little boxes on that, well,
On that one
hard
piece
for
of
Kathy
paper.
now.
Well, I
Kim,
take,
question or another
Actually,
topic?
it's a comment to do with the next agenda, which is the
Yep.
first. The
Yep.
next long day of TTA negotiations is the first. So I would expect that we're gonna need to have an update to the board
non-meeting?
on the first, a
Well,
non-meeting.
Jim he should be
So
here anyway, right?
He's gonna be here, and that's
So have a
our
non-meeting
next-
at 7,
At
right?
7,
Seven.
Yeah, so
We can arrange
policy
that.
Got
goes
policy,
at
yeah.
6, and then
Yeah.
we're gonna meet at 7, so
we've got policy, then we'd come to the non-meeting.
we should
And we
probably
get
plan
Jim
that
to-
now.
okay.
Yeah, I come to do the agenda on the Tuesday following the meeting, so that's when I'm here, on about 10 o'clock in the morning.
Was there a decision made about the transportation?
Me? My
Yes,
turn,
I'm
finally?
sorry.
I'm gonna be quick, because I want the future Mr. Timberlane to go home and go to bed. He needs his beauty rest.
And I know he's got bags on
He
his eyes.
needs his
not gonna
beauty
win the
rest over
contest.
there. Two quick things. The bullying update is on the back burner list, which doesn't thrill me, because they're supposed to be getting an update on November 27th, so why aren't we seeing them on December 6th?
Okay.
I don't
well,
want,
we-
I don't
have
want
we
to see
got
that
the list?
I thought
pushed
that
out
they
to
were-
December 20th and then further and further.
No, it was a bullying update, was the second, they had mentioned at the meeting that it was the second meeting of December. And that was
Second meeting.
discussed at the meeting, that's why it got put there, otherwise I would have put it on the 6th.
We did discuss it at the meeting, so I'm sure
Sep-
that
it was the
Kathy
second
put it in the
December?
right
It was the
date.
second one.
In the right
Okay,
spot.
I think we discussed how
You
long
can
it would take.
re-request if you'd like, but
no, I had in my notes that they were doing something November 27th, so I thought they were coming in to
Yep.
see us.
That's
What,
the
on TPAC?
T-PAF.
That's the
Feedback,
T-PAF, and then we
okay.
asked them to come back after.
Maybe that's why I just wanted to double check. I don't want to see that get pushed out. The other thing, Sue, you sent out an email to the board, and I had some questions on it. And I know you had said to try to bring it up earlier, but we kind of jumped over the reports, and I didn't get a chance to get my hand up. And now I can't pull the email up, right? When we were, as a board, advised as to what we can communicate with employees and not with employees, and I wanted clarification on that. If you recall.
So you asked, can I speak?
We were given, we were told that the superintendent had reminded, of course, my thing's, has asked you to remind all of us that if any board member has a question or concern, to direct them directly to him, and then they would go to the concerns of the employees. And I just wanted to clarify where that line is, because when you read the policy, it's a little skewed, but, I mean, clearly, if I have personal and private issues,
As a
or any
parent.
issues,
As
I
a
have no
parent.
problem to go
As a
forward.
parent, you're a parent, but no one on this board can give the direction to any of the employees in this district.
And it's a
other than
matter
you.
of giving direction. That's what I
Right.
just want to make sure.
Yeah,
So
as
if
a
I have an
parent-
employee that comes up to me and starts talking to me about something,
No.
or has a question and
Talk.
concern,
No.
there's
Well-
no problem with me speaking with them. I just,
And
there's a
what
lot of
happened- yeah.
ambiguity there, and I just want to make sure it's clarified publicly.
Well, let's just
So-
flush it out so everybody understands,
Yep.
right? So when I first got here, it was all different people, and they were all calling whoever they wanted and telling people to do, you do this, do that, go get this, go. And so I need to have the body of what's being asked to be done, so the right people are being asked to do it, number one, and number two, whose plates are full, you know? So what was happening, the wrong people were being asked to do certain things, being held accountable for getting them wrong. And some people were overworked because they were more accommodating and took calls, and some people didn't take calls at all. And so there was a policy that said, like, wait a minute, board members shouldn't be calling individual employees and directing their work. Now, it gets a little tricky when you're co-chairs and those sorts of things, right?
Yeah,
So
on those subcommittees.
you're working together
You're
on-
talking with an employee as the co-chair, but I'm with Christie. I'm not directing, but we're talking about an agenda, put this for us, and we congenially decide on an agenda. I don't think I'm directing her work, but
Yeah. And anybody that, even when they're doing that with you, they're coming to me. Like,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
Roxanne with strategic plan, they're still coming to me. I'm
Right.
involved in every aspect in both districts. And there are some people that used to, nobody on this board, they used to think I didn't have anything in Hampstead. Well, think again, I got a lot of work in Hampstead, in both districts, really. So it just helps, and it's, you know, again, if we're all working together, this is a governance team, it flows a little bit
you're in a
better.
social setting. I had made a comment that, I had been at a banquet and I had not seen Don Woodworth since he had been ill, and we talked socially. Am I not allowed to ask about his health? Of course I'm allowed to do that. He's a human being. I've
That's-
known him for 45 years.
And it even gets a little different,
But I'm
right?
not telling him what to do in his office.
Some of them are very sensitive about talking to board members because they're nervous about talking to you. Like, they think they're somehow being evaluated.
Yeah.
So, and then some of them are just very open and would share things with you that perhaps They shouldn't, I don't know, but at the end of the day, we're just trying to keep the lines of communication clear. But as
So
far as
it's
the
a matter of
difference between-
direction.
Yeah.
It's just, and that's what I just want to make sure. It's a matter of,
Or-
clearly, we're not supposed to give direction to them. That
Or-
should go through
Or
you.
evaluating them, you know, walking in, telling them,
Well, clearly, that's,
I
but
know.
my point is, if they contact us and want to talk about something, we're not prohibited from speaking to staff members. Of
course not.
We're prohibited from giving direction, which should go through you, and that's what I just want to, because there's a lot of ambiguity out there
There is.
as to like, oh, we're off limits, and as you said, employees feel they can't come and talk to us, and I want that clarified, that they are allowed to come and talk to us.
and the ones that are comfortable will, and the ones that aren't will say, I'm not allowed to talk to you.
Okay.
I mean,
So-
and I can't make them talk to you.
No, no one's
know, and I
asking you
can't-
to, but I just don't want somebody,
There's-
you know,
there's-
when you run into somebody and they go, oh, wait, you're a board member, I can't talk to you now, because they feel that they've been told they can't, that's not a proper perception on their part either. They're allowed to speak to us, whether it be socially or about anything. Clearly, we can't give direction, but they could come to us, that we could then come here and say,
Right.
I'm hearing these concerns, these are things
Right.
we need to talk about.
And we've done that before, people have spoken to us. and
That's
we've
just
been-
wanted the clarification.
Yeah,
I'm
like
glad
for-
you brought that up,
and then
I'd forgotten we had that.
It
email.
gets even more, like, so I had a board member contacting someone while they're working, sending them an email asking them for a favor to do something for them. None of you, this is prior boards. And they're going back and forth when they're supposed to be teaching, you know, doing something for a board member as a favor. That's a problem. There's a pressure
Understandable.
there, right? So, you know, we would just remind them, that's not a good idea, but, you know, sometimes the TTA say, oh, we're not allowed to talk to the board. Well, you've heard that, right, publicly, they sat there, I mean, not James, somebody else, so, you know, within reason, but,
Anything else for tonight? Yes, Lee?
Other business. So I attended a middle school boys soccer game this week with another area town, and I just want to say how proud I am of our boys. It got to be a physical game. There was a lot of jeering from the parents of the other team from the sidelines, heckling of the referees.
That's an understatement. I
Really?
was at that same game.
And it got really rough out there, and our boys maintained their composure. Not boys, they were young men. Really made me proud to see the way they,
was it 18?
B team,
B team,
team.
and, yeah, and kudos to the coach, too.
yeah.
Because she does a great job. They're all young, majority of them are younger kids, and
I think if you
She
see,
does a
you see
great job.
Angelo too, you want to thank him, because that is a major focus of grades 6 through 12, middle schools right through high school. We get a lot of sportsmanship awards. That's a
And
priority.
They,
for
they
him.
showed sportsmanship. They rose above. They didn't stoop down to that level, and I was proud of them.
to the point where the ref was arguing with parents from the other team and players from the other team. And our kids, they did. They did the right thing, they held themselves right, they never raised their voices.
Not at all.
Good job.
Excellent.
It was a nice moment for them.
Thanks for bringing that up, Lee. It's nice to hear good things about our kids. Anything else? If not, I'm gonna call a meeting adjourned at 10:46. Have a good evening. Good luck on your
Good luck, Mr.
Pageant.
I know, I hate calling it a pageant, but it is what it is.
Oh, wow.